Best Damn Podcast. I am your host, John King. As always, I would like to thank you guys for joining me. Ask that you please add, follow, and check us out. Follow me, Facebook, Instagram at Best Damn Podcast, Twitter, The Real Best Damn, wherever you're watching this from. Please make sure to hit the like, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you think, and share this link. Help me to get it out there. That's how new people find me. It's absolutely the best way to support. If you'd like to donate support to the channel, the links are in the description box down below. As I mentioned in the kind of shorter little part of this earlier, when I was outside, it got a little cold, so I decided to come in. Um, uh, we will be live premiering the interview with Gary Parker tomorrow night. So I just want to go ahead and jump into this tonight. This is the hidden web of power. So tonight we're going to start with egregores. Right now, I feel like too, and I've mentioned this a few times over the last couple of live streams or whatever. Just how powerful memes are. You know, and how powerful ideas are, symbols are, and how symbolism is, in I think it's Confucius said that symbolism will be their downfall, right? And it's because symbols in themselves, as opposed to characters and words, which are very powerful as well, right? We know that they are verbal expressions of will and intent, and they have the power of life and death. That's what the Bible says about the tongue. You know, we can curse ourselves, we can bless ourselves through our words. Our thoughts create our reality as well. Now imagine all of that shoved into the power of a symbol. And not only is it embodying the meaning of one word, but a series of words or an idea, an archetype, a construct, right? It is the entire energetic embodiment of a concept, right? And that's why I believe the ancients, when they were, creating hieroglyphs and pictograms and all these different things, um, they chose to use symbols, right, for their method of writing and their method of, um, pushing forth ideas into the future. And we know because languages change, right? Languages die, languages evolve. The English language, just for example, it's not the same, as the mother tongue and that was spoken, years and years and years ago when it began. It's not the same in one part of the world as it is in another. But see, these symbols, they are, embodiments of these ideas. And it doesn't matter if 10,000 years pass, we still will we can still grip what the same idea of what was being pushed forth to us, you know. And, I believe it's the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And he says, like, when reading these tablets, he says, if the light is in you, and he says to read it 100 times because the light in you will respond to the light that's in these tablets. Meaning that the spirit or the consciousness that was put into the symbol, that was put into the word, that was put into the idea, right? It's alive because you're alive. You're a creative being. So it's like when you create something, you are putting your essence into it, and think about all of the mythos and mythologies throughout time, the Greeks, the Romans, all these different cultures and how they learned, the Norse and how they learned through mythology, you know, because these mythologies, these symbols, they have the ability to speak to the unconscious mind, you know. So much so that they can even become alive. We can create a meme, we can create a symbol, and we can put our energy so much into it. And if we have enough people that believe in this, it literally can create an entity out of its own self. I even heard somebody talking about the other day, they were saying, like, even if you didn't believe in Jesus and don't think that there was a historical real person named Jesus, there is now, right? There is an entity named Jesus now, because there are so many people for so long of a period of time that have put so much energy and worship and veneration and respect and love and all of these things, right, into that idea, creating and refining that archetype to where it's alive. It's palpable. It's real now. The same thing with the Baphomet. Same thing. Baphomet is real as shit, right? Like there, and that's why, like within the occult, we use sigil magic and things like this, because we can create that. We can create a brand, a logos out of that. You know, and add into that whatever concepts or ideas we want to achieve an end goal, whether that be for good or evil, right? And we see this too, and this is like a big thing for a lot of people, especially. I feel like for a lot of years, people had a problem with, the symbolism of like the all-seeing eye. They thought, oh, well, just because they're making those hand signs or just because they're covering that eye doesn't mean this or that. It does, though, right? And the reason they're doing that is because they're trying to connect to a frequency. They're trying to connect to an energy, right? They're giving reverence to that energy, right? Because they're in covenant with that energy, with that entity behind said energy. Because remember, where attention goes, energy flows. Man, somebody made a comment on one of the last videos, and they said, "Well, John, there's no such thing as angels and this and that." Angels and demons, everything is energy. And I agree, everything is energy. But I think we would be incredibly foolish to believe that we know we are energetic beings, but we are conscious. I think it would be incredibly like short-sighted and foolish to believe that the angelic realm, the angelic entities and demons, just because we don't see them with our physical eyes, to believe that they themselves aren't conscious as well and palpable as well and are a living being and living entity as well with their own, individuality and consciousness, because I believe they are. I definitely believe they are. And even some of these entities, and I've spoke about this also recently, like when we think of like God, in the different names, like, El Shaddai and these different descriptions of God, that these are different personas of one large, omnipresent, omnipotent entity. And I spoke about the same thing with Baphomet, right? When we see like Baphomet, you see the goat head and all of this, the male and female parts, because it's embodying something. They're showing you something through that symbol, right? These are the pieces that go into this concept, this idea. And you don't have to be aware of said concept in order to connect to it. That's why with symbolism, that's why they put, the satanic symbolism and all of this on your television and all over the internet and all of that, because even if you're not aware that you're seeing it, even if the symbolism has been hid or occulted or obscured, the eyes are the window to the soul, right? The eyes are the window to the soul. So, in everything that we see or perceive through the physical reality is just electrical signals or frequencies being interpreted by our brains, So when we see something through our eyes, we're seeing these light waves, right? And our brain is picking up on that light, and it's, basically transmitting that signal to our brains, and our brains are interpreting what that would look like. That's why they have different optical illusions, because our brain is just formatting patterns out of frequency. So our brain can actually create things that aren't even there. And matter of fact, our optical nerves aren't even attached at the back. So there's literally this space in between them, this void in between them, where we are wholeheartedly creating our reality. in what we're seeing. Same thing with our ears, right? These are vibrations of sound. We pick up these said frequencies, our ears translate them into electrical signals, right? Those synapses fire into the brain interprets what that sounds like. So even if you're not saved, just for instance, we'll use, the eye of providence, right? The all-seeing eye, just for instance, because that's one of the main symbols, I think, of our day. One that we see used a lot, especially, with politics, Hollywood, right? You might not even see that symbol present in an image. It can be hidden in an image. Or you might not be aware of the hand signal or gesture that's being made. Might not be aware of the symbolism in art or a picture, but because said symbol is there, your eyes are making that connection. And even though you aren't consciously aware of what you're looking at, your brain still is making the connection with that frequency, if that makes sense, right? So you're still feeding energy and intention into that sigil or that symbol. And I find egregores to be something same. These are entities, right, created out of, our intent. An egregore is a term in Western magic applied to the collective energy or force of a group of individuals, especially when the individuals are united toward a common purpose. An egregore forms in a magical lodge and becomes a reservoir of magical and spiritual power that influences rituals, the lodge itself, and the individuals within the lodge. Leon Fortune referred to this energy as, quote, a great thought form in the group mind of the lodge. The term egregore is said to have originally been used for an elemental magically created by a group to guard it. And, that would go back to the Celtics, right? Like the Celts, they were using elementals and druids, they were creating elementals out in the forest. And they believed that they were extremely powerful elemental beings, that these were some of the first beings ever created were elementals. Conscious energies made out of the elements. And it can either be positive or negative. The egregore evolves from the thoughts, emotions, and awareness of a collective, and it can be either positive or negative. A negative example would be mob violence, and a positive example would be a healing circle. A magical lodge egregore takes time to develop. Lodges that have been in existence for a long time have powerful egregores. Everything that takes place within a lodge, meetings, activities, initiations, and various rituals, contributes to and energizes the egregore. In addition, the individual thoughts, intentions, emotions, virtues, and actions of the member feed the egregore as well. An egregore takes on a synergistic life of its own. This is one reason that lodges are careful about who they admit to membership. For if the egregore loses power or turns negative, the lodge ultimately will fail. A newly chartered lodge will build its egregore in part from its chartered tradition by drawing upon the symbols, teachings, deities, myths, rituals, and interplaying contacts used by other lodges. And if you truly think about this too, right? You'll see different types of lodges, whether it's like hermetic lodges, luciferic lodges, right? They're always usually started uh, based on well-established egregores, right? Whether it's Baphomet, Lucifer, Hermes, Thoth, right? These well-established entities that have already been solidified into the collective consciousness, right? And I believe they do it for that reason. that was said, and it's like, and if you start your own, group, uh, a lot of times, they start with an entity that's already in existence because of that. A thought form is an anon-physical entity or object created by thought that exists in the mental plane or the astral plane. Thought forms are used in magic and the casting of spells. Thought form structures, objects, and places can be created magically to exist in the astral plane for the purposes of visualization and workings. Thought form entities can be created and summoned through evocation to perform certain tasks, such as sending to carry out spells or even to perform psychic attack. Thought forms are invisible to most people, but can be perceived clairvoyantly. And like for an example, a lot of times, with thought forms and egregores and things of this nature, you will see energy of something, usually sacrifice. Like let's just hypothetically say that the recent Charlie Kirk event, right? This is a perfect example of a thought form, and how it is being hijacked, the energy of that sacrifice, right? Which is, the sacrifice, it invokes this large outpouring of emotion because he was such a polarizing figure, right? You had instantly, as soon as people believed he was assassinated, and whether he truly was assassinated or not makes no difference, by the way, right? Perception is reality. And we will still output the same energy if it, whether it actually happened or it didn't actually happen. The character, the entity, the the corporate entity, if you will, was sacrificed. So the persona of Charlie Kirk no longer is alive within the collective, right? If that guy faked his own death or whatever, it won't matter because he'll no longer be going by that name. He'll no longer be performing shows and doing what he did before that life is done, right? So that has been sacrificed, whether he actually died or not, right? And remember, a lot of times, magic is an act of deception, right? A lot of times when, dealing with hexes and curses and things like that, the best way to get it to stick or to work, for one, is to get somebody out of a state of grace because it can't attach if you don't have sin. And then two is to get them to participate in it themselves, right? And to get them to do it to themselves. And that's exactly what we've seen happen with like the Charlie Kirk stuff, right? Like everybody is participating along with it willingly, whether they know it or not, whether they think they are or not. They're going along with said ritual, you know. They perform things on particular days because, of the phase of the moon, because of the day that it correlates with the planet. They wear particular colors because of that, the energies that it invokes. They use particular numbers because of the energy that it invokes. That's why when he was sitting there, he had the black and white shirt that said freedom and the three hats with, 47 on it. It was all about the 33, right? It was very similar to, that 33 energy is usually a king kill, is the type of sacrifice that it's called. You know, JFK was a king kill. King Von, the rapper, was a king kill. But they use that influence and they use that emotional outpouring. And think about it, as soon as it happened, you had people that hated him laughing, celebrating, talking about how he deserved it, on social media instantly. that was being played over and over and over and over. And then how many different videos came out after the fact of people analyzing it and trying to figure out who did it and what really happened. And, you know, fuck, you still have Candace Owens talking about it fucking, what, months later, every day for this entire time. And she has millions of followers. And we're all putting all of that thought, that energy, and that intention into that. So they can then hijack that energy, whether he's really gone or not. They hijack that energy and they can, put that towards something, to the ends that they want to, to create, the agenda that they're trying to create. Other methods that there is servitors, right? Where you create a sigil, draw an entity or a being and focus intention in it. And you slowly envision this thing being created, right? And you can send this thing out to make someone fall in love with you. You can send this thing out to bring money and wealth to you. This is the same concept. The same concept. They're hijacking the energy of Charlie Kirk in this example, to create a servitor of sorts to be able to bring something back to them. And in this case, we've seen how many different groups try to hijack the energy because they're all part of the occult. They all understand how it works. Like, the common people don't get it. They don't understand. They think they do it a lot of times, but they don't. It's like they're not really in tune with what's going on. So it's like you see like some people, like Candace Owens, she's hijacking it. Oh, my dear friend Charlie, and I'm going to talk about it months later. And, I'm going to go about it from this point of view. Or, you've got, Benjamin Netanyahu coming out and saying, oh, he died for Israel, right? We're going to use that energy for the pro-Israel movement. Trump and all them, it was conservative values, right? And those left liberals, and, that the guy who did it was dating a transgender person. It's anti-transgender. Like, you see how everybody has an agenda of something they're trying to accomplish based off of the energy. And I said this too, the same thing, and we'll talk about it in just a second as we move forward, like with the Keck the Frog thing, right? Keck the Frog, which, represents like the MAGA movement. Or the Groyper frog, right? Which is, kind of like an alternative to the MAGA, with Nick Fuentes. And you see like the rise of Nick Fuentes, right? You think it's just a coincidence? And then think about the entities and seeing some of these, like with the Trump thing, him being the MAGA, the magus, the magician, right? And this derives from what? The Temple of Set, okay? And then it's being represented by this Egyptian deity, right? Kek, you know. And what is he? He's the god of chaos and darkness. And what have you seen? Chaos. you know, it's the shaking up of the entire system. It's because that's the face, that's the energy, that's the archetype that's representing the movement. And then the spin off of that with the Groyper thing, same thing. Look at what Nick Fuentes does, right? And not every one of these people are probably even aware of what they're doing. Not all the time are people aware of how it actually works. But then look at like Nick Fuentes. It's like incredibly controversial, incredibly divisive, right? Like he's always, talking about racial stuff and, all of these things, right? Having beefs with all these other influencers. I mean, he hated Charlie Kirk. And then think about it. It's that same frog, Pepe the Frog, spun off into, the Groyper thing. Esoteric philosophy holds that thoughts produce two effects: a radiating vibration and a floating colored form. The lifespan and endurance of a thought form depends on the nature and intensity of the thought. Most thought forms dissipate. Those imbued with sufficient energy, either through sustained intensity or through ritual, can become anchored on the astral plane and on the physical plane. And think about the Groyper thing. What would be the ritual? The guy who tried to kill Nick Fuentes, right? And he was sacrificed. He was killed by the cops out in the guy's yard, right? He says, they tried to throttle me in the crib, right? Because he was banned and all of this, right? That was all part of it. That was all part of the ritual. Whether he's aware of it or not. Same thing with Trump. He did the whole fake assassination shit, right? Characters in myth and in legend and even deities can be thought forms. They exist as long as they are energized by collective thought. When they fade from interest, they return to formlessness on the astral plane. Annie Besant and C.W. Ledbetter, Theosophist and clairvoyant, said that thought forms are four-dimensional in nature and therefore are difficult to describe in three-dimensional terms. They classified thought forms into three groups. 1, the image of the thinker. 2, an image of a material object associated with the thought. And 3, an independent image expressing the inherent qualities of the thought. Thoughts that are low in nature, such as anger, hate, lust, greed, create thought forms that are dense in color and form. Thoughts of a more spiritual nature generate forms that have greater purity, clarity, and refinement. See, and this is the same thing. These colors, these represent the chakras too. Like you've ever heard of it's like the red shirt thing. Like when you wear a red shirt, people are more attractive to you, or people are more attracted to you because, it plays off of the root chakra, right? So like the red car, the woman in the red dress in the movie The Matrix, right? It's the color, you know. It's playing to a part of our metaphysics that is, it's the carnal, sexual part of our nature, right? And it's ruled by those colors. That's why they paint the walls in prisons and jails certain colors to make the inmates more docile. That's why they put their jumpsuits certain colors to make them more hungry to buy commissary. Same thing in commercials, Whenever like there's an advertisement on a commercial, it may be just one object in the scene, but they'll have something in the scene like the color of red or green or something like that to trigger you to spend money or to play on that carnality. They know exactly what they're doing. And a lot of people think it's hocus pocus or woo woo shit, but it's real. And that's the thing about the occult and new age and all of this. And it's like I was doing like a live premiere earlier, and everybody kept telling me like, why don't you explain what the deception is of the new age? And we'll get into that tonight. But it's like, it's the subtlety of it. These laws that operate upon reality, they're gonna. It's like this is where people get it twisted when they think that they say, well, astrology is evil, tarot is evil, and this and that is evil. So then they believe that automatically discounts it. That it means it's not legitimate. Just because it's forbidden in the Bible doesn't mean it's not real or that it doesn't work. You know, the reason divination is forbidden is because it is real and it does work, right? But it's attached to a lesser spirit, a lesser star, a lesser consciousness. That's why you're forbidden for doing it. Not because it ain't effective, not because it doesn't work, because that thought form, that egregore that is attached to it, right, of divination, it's got that energy in it, and it's always gonna it's got those parts of it, those aspects, like I said, of the El Shaddai and all of that, like the different aspects of God. Same thing with these egregores and thought forms. They have different aspects as well, and some aspects of their archetype can be dangerous, you know. And you're opening yourself up to other things because other entities attach to said thought forms as well. You see them associated with certain things. You know? For example, a lot of people associate, you know, ritual abuse and sacrifice with Satan. So if you're dealing with Satan in your life and you're doing satanic things, you're wearing satanic stuff, you're listening to satanic stuff, whether you're a Satanist or not, whether you even believe in Satan as an entity or not, right? The archetype is there, right? Of sacrifice, of abuse, of deception, of delusion, of all of these things, right? So eventually it's going to come around to bite you because that is part of that energy that you're attaching yourself to, and that you're making you're in covenant with said energy when you start engaging with that energy, you know. And that's where I think a lot of people get in trouble with things. It's like, at least for myself, that's what has gotten me in trouble over the years. It's like my intentions would have been totally pure in a lot of situations, with things that I was doing. I would read a book or, do some type of ritual or something like that in the past, and totally, wanting to do it for a benevolent purpose, which not always benevolent. I guess, anytime we try to bend the will or bend the universe to our will for selfish reasons, right? That's when it's witchcraft, you know. But nonetheless, I wasn't trying to do it to hurt anybody or myself, but because of what I was engaging in and what I was doing, you don't get to pick and choose the bits and pieces that you want. Like, you get the whole energy, the whole entity, you know. And I was connecting myself to some really dark and gnarly stuff. So eventually it caught up to me and I got dark and gnarly results, right? And it had dark and gnarly effects on me mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you know. And because a lot of these entities, like in thought forms, they are so fragmented and scattered and, schizophrenic. A lot of times, that's what happens to people. They get scattered, they get schizophrenic, right? Because of the energy they're working with. That's part of its nature. Thought forms build up in a person's energy field or aura, creating and influencing behavior and characteristics, like I just said, right? You deal with a particular energy, right? And it's got those negative aspects in that archetype. I'm telling you, I don't give a fuck. It don't usually happen at first either. Some people, when you get burnt immediately, consider yourself lucky. It's those slow burns that usually bust your head the worst, and from my experience. When they blast back immediately in your face, when it blows up in your face immediately, it's like that hot stove. You're like, oh, okay, I'm not touching that again, right? I did this, and I get an immediate bad effect, right? But when you don't and you get good results, right? And you get, and there's an exchange. There's always an exchange in a covenant and an agreement and a deal, and this is what I say a lot of times too. Like, you don't have to perform some fucking satanic ritual where you're, bloodletting and, putting babies in skin in a circle and shit like that in order to sell your soul. If you are not absolutely and totally aware of the thought form, the egregore, the entity, the consciousness, the archetype that you're dealing with the things that you're engaging in, and what the wages is of what they are giving you, and you are getting something whether you think you are or not, whether you're getting sexual gratification from something that you're practicing, whether you're getting money from something you're engaging in, whether you're getting a high from something that you're using, right? That's what you're getting. So you're going to give something in return for that exchange. And that's why when people engage with, pharmakia, right, with drugs, their life gets wrecked. That's the exchange, right? I will, the energy of pharmakia is, I will make you feel good. I will alter your state of consciousness in exchange for your life force, in exchange for your vitality, in exchange. That's the covenant. And it drains a person, till they're dead. And that's why people a lot of times have to hit rock bottom to come out of that. Because they see like that this is never going to go another way. This particular entity, this particular energy, it's not going to change for you, dude. You won't be able to use that energy successfully. And that's why the Bible is written the way it's written. We like to think of like the Bible is like this restrictive, systemic form of oppression and control, and it's like it's just not true. It's not true. It's written the way it's written to keep you from getting your ass handed to you on the spiritual plane. That's just the facts. That's what it's written for. It's not because God has decided that everything should be a certain way. God just created it all and understands how it all works and understands the exchange and understands, right, the consequence. For every action, there is a reaction, that there is covenants being made, and that for all of these things, every, practice you have in your life that's immoral, that's predatory, all of these things, right? You may get short-term gain, but you're going to have long-term suffering as a result because it's set up that way. That's just the way creation is. You can't go around it. And I want you to think about it too. People say, well, if that's true, why do evil people, tend to, be the richest and tend to, well, think about it. They're willing to go the furthest. They're willing to go the furthest. They're willing to give every bit of themselves over to the entity to have what they desire. They're willing to make sacrifices, right? And they'll sacrifice others. They'll pay, and see, and that's what, the Bible's talking about, getting your payment on earth or getting it in heaven, right? They're selling every bit of their essence, their vitality, their soul right here on earth. They'll have nothing left because it's all promised and covenant away for what they gained in this life. And that's why it says it's easier to thread a camel through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. So when you hear all this prosperity teaching from this Zionist churchianity religious bullshit, They're full of it. Oh, you got a demon and that's why you're sick and that's why you have money problems. And, you know, as they have these 501c3s and they're part of these corporations. And remember, the words say everything, right? It's corpus oration, right? It's the talking dead. They're giving life to an egregore, to an energy, right? And what happens to them every single time, too? Every single time. And tell me it's not true. Every single time when they build up these 501c3s and they join, Christian alliances and all of this stuff, they have to adhere to it. Just like if you join a club or a cult or a group, a society, you have to adhere to their standards, to their rights, to all of that, right? And if not, you won't be a part of it anymore. And I don't care if it's the fucking OTO. I don't care if it's a Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn. I don't care what it is. Thelema, I don't care what you're practicing, what you're a part of, what group you're in. If you don't adhere to that, you will no longer be a part of it anymore. One way or the other. Churches are the same way. They join these Christian alliances and they have to teach the doctrines that they're told to teach the way that they're told to teach them, or they can't be part of the alliance. They have to adhere to a set of rules and practices and standards, or they can't get the corporation and the tax break. So they're adhering to something. They're playing to a spirit, to an egregore, to a thought form. They're in covenant with something other than God. That's why God says you can't serve two masters. They're serving money. Monai, right? The single eye God. Not the God they think they're serving. Not the one true living God. And that's why you see their agenda go from well-meaning, usually, and I've seen it happen. Like I went to a church years and years ago. I did the maintenance there and I did the sound for them. It's like, I was very young. This is when I first kind of like got out of prison and stuff like that. And I watched this church grow, and hang out with the pastor and everything. I watched them grow. And before you know it, they was like starting a second location. They joined the Christian Alliance, like all of these things I'm saying. And then they started teaching different because they had to. They had to teach certain things in order to, just like a school. To be part of the Board of Education, you have to teach certain things, To be certified as a university, you have to teach certain things, right? They have to adhere to this. These are bodies. These are corporations. These are spiritual bodies. And then as they did that, then it's like the bills got to be paid. There's, everything becomes about the bottom line and about expansion and growing, and it becomes a business. And it's no longer about the people. It's no longer about helping others. It's no longer about leading people to God, but it becomes about, focus on making the pastor famous and, you know what I mean? And focus on building the biggest fucking, multi-million-dollar church and, compound and all of this, right? And you see it almost every single time. Same thing with, grassroots political movements. They can start off incredibly pure, and like well-meaning and well-intentioned. But the same thing happens. The movement will almost certainly, as it gains prominence, and there's all types of energies influencing on that thought form, right? It drags that thought form down, it evolves, And as they box themselves in within the labels that they're wearing. They put themselves in covenant with certain things, and you see this degradation take place. You see the movements be hijacked. You know, Same thing with politicians. They get in covenant with these lobbies that have agendas. So then they're passing laws based on who pays them. Same thing with someone when they are in the entertainment industry, whether they're an artist or a musician, right? Once they sign the contract with the label, then it becomes they're in covenant with that label, right? And it becomes all about the brand and no longer about the art. And people want success so bad that they're willing to do anything. Think about Kanye West saying, hey, I sacrificed my mom, and you see this a lot, people that are, famous in order, because that's that exchange of energy. That's that sacrifice, that's an exchange. It's like, if you want to go to this next level, you have to give up the person you love the most. And you say, well, how can they take that person if it's against their will? It's not against their will. The person is, and I hate to say guilt by association, but once that person is out of a state of grace, right, that's when that hex, that curse comes to collect. And they had to have done some type of action or something to open that door, or else it couldn't happen to them. So whether they're a victim of circumstance or not, they participated in it, whether it was knowing or unknowing. And I'm sad to say that that's the truth. So when people sacrifice other people that have no knowledge of it and nothing to do with it, they did something within their life. Whether it was they were sexually immoral, they told a lie, they were caught out of a state of grace. And when that happened, that demon, that entity that the person made covenant with was able to act on their life. According to Besant and Ledbetter, selfish thought moves in a curve, eventually coming back on itself and the person and expanding itself on its own level. On the other hand, unselfish thoughts move outward in an open curve, expanding as it goes. It is capable of piercing higher spiritual dimensions and thus becomes a channel through which higher planes pour themselves into lower planes. This is how prayer functions. So when you're wondering why, when you're asking that prayer of like, God, why aren't you doing this in my life? It's because it's pinched off, because it's curved inward. Right? It's when you're praying for others, praying for, you know what I mean? Not selfish prayer. Selfish prayer don't generally get answered. It doesn't have enough energy behind the thought form because of that curve. Besant and Ledbetter stressed that the regular meditation is important in cultivating positive thought forms. The meditation sends out a stream of magnetism that continues to work long after the meditation is ended. Some thought forms occur spontaneously. Group minds are formed whenever a group of persons concentrates on the same thoughts, ideas, or goals, such as a team of employers or a crowd of demonstrators. To some extent, the group mind possesses the group, as witnessed in the psychic bonding and power that coalesces in crowds and the synergy of a close-knit working group. When the group disperses, the group mind usually loses power. And think about that, like you're at a concert and shit. It's like everybody's on the same vibe, or a football game, right? And you see the stadium, they're always like shaped like a hyperbolic dish, right? Or like a giant speaker or something, right? To amplify that energy. And the teams that they're watching, what do they have? A logo, a sigil, a brand. And when you have 70,000 people watching every Sunday, and then millions on television watching. That's a lot of energy behind that brand. And remember, money is a current, it's currency, it's energy. That's why football teams and shit like that make so much money, right? And that's why players are able to command so much money because they're the stars, right? Thought forms may arise spontaneously out of the collective unconscious as archetypes that take on phantom or seemingly real form. This may explain reports of the devil, supernatural monsters, entities, non physical beings, and otherworldly beings. And, kind of think about this too. Um, how extraterrestrials, like it becomes more and more prominent now as more and more people believe in it. UFOs, it was like a phenomenon. It was like at one point in time, it was kind of like, um, once like Roswell and shit like that, it's like then all of a sudden more and more people were seeing them, more and more people were having experiences and abductions. And now today it's kind of common. Everybody's got like a story of some type usually where they have some sort of paranormal experience. And think about too, when you see like the spirits of people, ghosts or whatever that are trapped on this plane, even if it's just residual energy, that means in that person's life, that was a thought that they obsessed over, you know? And even in the afterlife, that thought still lives, and it's driven to do that whatever it did, whether it was possessing a home that they cared about, right? And that's all that mattered to them was their home. They worked for it their whole life. It was, that their marriage was built around it. You got to think about how important, that really was to a person if everything in their life evolved around it and in it. And then wonder why it would be a haunted house. Because they coveted something, and like I said, they're in covenant with something when they start to do that. In Western tradition, thought forms are created on the astral plane with the triangle of causation, a primary foundation of occult astral work. Thought forms require intense concentration, otherwise, they do not last. Thought forms of things on the physical plane can be recreated in exact detail on the astral plane. Thought forms of gods, angels, places, goals, and activities can be created out of astral matter. Artificial elementals created by rituals to perform low level tasks and errands and to be directed at individuals to protect, heal, or harm. To have an effect, thought forms must be able to latch on to similar vibrations in the aura of the recipient. If they are unable to do so, they boomerang back to the sender. Thus, one who directs evil thoughts towards another runs the risk of having them return. Right? Your hating ass is going to get it back on you, basically. So, and you see, it's saying it has to latch on to similar vibrations in the aura. So, like I was saying, if you're out of a state of grace, right? Because if you're protected in a state of grace, you don't have that low vibe shit in you. So, nothing dark, evil can attach. You're protected. You're in a state of grace. It's incompatible. It can't hook on to anything. There's no negativity for it to latch onto. That's why a lot of times demons will return in threes and shit like that, because they'll usually catch you. If they come back day one, if they come day one and you're in a state of grace, you can almost guarantee that when they come back day 2 or 3, they're going to catch you eventually, fucking up somehow. And when you hex somebody, hex isn't cursing, right? When you like you hex somebody and you really bind something to them, and make a big enough sacrifice, which is why like abortion and shit like that is so prominent, right? Because it's like, in that particular, section of things, that's like the best sacrifice you can give, because it's innocence, it's a life that hasn't been tainted at all. And that's why you see like high priests and shit, satanic high priests that always are, around abortions and shit like that. And that's why there's a major agenda for that. That's why you see, like, lip injections and shit like that. It's used with, the foreskin of babies and, the parts of the abortion. Like, it's injected into women for youth. Why? Because they're literally taking innocent youth, right? And that's been sacrificed and sticking it in themselves. They're literally cannibalizing another person. Whether you think so or not, that's what's happening. Think about the whole adrenochrome thing. Same thing. Taking the essence, the energy of youth. And that's why they do with the SRA and all of that, right? The ritual abuse, the whole torture and all of that. It's, and they can, not only does it fragment and split you open to where they can place an altar in that fragment, and an altar is created within you where they can associate, words, phrases, colors, all types of things as, their trigger words, trigger phrases, trigger images, whatever. Smells is a lot of times smells is the easiest, way. I remember watching this one thing on this guy that was like, he was done wrong by his grandfather. And he said every time that his grandfather would do that to him and bring harm to him, that, he could smell like the lavender of their home. So, anytime they wanted to program him again later on, all they had to do was just that smell of lavender, and he'd automatically go into that archetype of the altar they built through that ritual abuse. If I drowned you every day for the next year, right, and every time before I drowned you, I show you a pink lighter, right? I don't even have to drown you at a certain point. I just pull out the pink lighter. I just pull out the pink lighter. And I can trigger that same persona or alter ego. That's why it's called an alter ego, because it's built on an altar. And you can fragment the personality and create an entire new personality built off of the trauma. So I can just say the phrase or show you the thing, and I can get you to comply or get you to go into that, and this is where we see like the whole MK Ultra thing. And what's wild is like people that have been MK Ultra, like they use a lot of the same type of tricks, right? Anybody that's ever messed with this stuff or been victimized by it knows what I'm talking about too. Like if you try to escape it, and this is no shit, like if you try to escape it, they will send people, Say that it's a red and blue striped shirt that they'd wear every time they'd abuse you. You can be at an event speaking, or you could be at a restaurant with your family or whatever, and you're trying to get away from that cult. You're trying to get away from that abuse. You know, they'll send a person right up to you wearing a red and blue shirt to try to get that part of you to come back out. They don't. They know what they're doing. You know, they know exactly what they're doing. That's why it's so hard for people to escape that shit. It feels inescapable when you're in it. It feels like something you can never get out of. And to be honest, I don't know if you can without Jesus, without Christ, without God. I don't think you can. Because you need, like, you yourself on the spiritual plane or whatever, you aren't as high of rank or stature, or you're not as intelligent and clever as the entity you're dealing with. They're completely in that 4D. They understand all the parameters. They can see it all. They're outside of time. They can anticipate your every move. They can read your mind. They know all of your fears, all of your weaknesses. And all they got to do is convince you. They don't have to actually even be stronger than you. And the fact is, you have dominion over all of these things because you're the child of God. But that's the trick of darkness. Darkness convinces you that you don't have power, or gets you to give that power over, give that dominion over through covenant. The duration of a thought form, its strength and the distance it can travel depend on the strength and clarity of the original thought. Thought forms are said to have the capability to assume their own energy and appear to be intelligent and independent. Equally intense thought can disperse them, or they can simply disintegrate when their purpose is finished. Some may last years. In magical practices, it is customary to charge a thought form with a finite lifespan, and at the end of it, reabsorb the thought form back into the astral matter. Thought forms that are not dispersed, as well as some particularly powerful thought forms, can go out of control. They wander about looking for energy sources and attaching themselves to people like vampiric entities so they can turn on their creators, as in the case of Alexandra David Neal. Right? This is what I'm talking about, like a servitor, or something like that. It's the same thing, just different language. When you're done with it, right? Like, if you don't, for one, that's a piece of your soul. It's a piece of your energy that you use to create said thought form. And a lot of people go to shamans and shit like that, and they think it's fake, right? They think it's fake. They're like, oh, well, this shaman is bringing me back pieces of my soul, right? And it's like, yeah, I bet they actually are, like, because the way we are with our thought forms, we do create, pieces of our soul, right? Like, we're literally putting our energy in that pieces of our soul. So, a shaman or something, that what they're doing is they're going into the astral and searching for those thought forms that you've left out there. That's just the truth. Like, and think about it. We create astral cords to relationships and shit, and think about how long it takes sometimes to, like, get over a relationship. That's why you've connected yourself energetically to that person in such a way that there's a thought form. That's why you're thinking about them. That's every time I go through a breakup, I do a cord cutting ritual immediately. I cord cut from that bitch. I'm like, nope. I don't want to think about you. I'm blocking you. I'm cutting off all communication from you, you know. And it's not because I'm a mean, malice person and I'm malevolent and evil towards who I was with. It's because I don't want to continue to feed my fucking energy into that person for the rest of my life. You know? Who does? Who would want to do that? And think about it too. Like we do that. Like a lot of time too when we're like, when we can't get over a person, there's a reason. Like honestly, that's why usually. Like we feel some sort of unfinished business. We have unresolved thoughts or feelings about something, and it keeps us attached to that. And it recurs, or um, same thing with regrets in our lives. We're constantly, feeding energy to that. I met a girl years ago, and she told me, and I didn't understand it. She seen me coming a mile away, actually. And she's like, "You're leaking energy," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" This is years ago. And she's like, "You're leaking energy." And I didn't understand what the concept actually meant, but she was right. Like I was essentially, and we do this too. Like I'm just telling you, in our lives, when we go throughout our lives and the relationships that we're in, especially, like those are some of the most powerful bonds we have is our sexual relationships. You know, because the two become one, right? We astrally entangle ourselves with that person. Remember, you don't just sleep with them; you sleep with every person they slept with. And you don't just sleep with them; you sleep with every entity they're in covenant with. I mean, so it's powerful. It's powerful. You know. That's why when you see people in relationships, their whole entire personality can change based on the person they're with because there's that much influence over the person, you know? And you see it a lot with, uh, like, just to kind of give some examples, like, usually, like, if because men are more of the imprinter, it's the male, the masculine, the phallic symbolism, and females are more of like the yielding, the negative, right? Um, and they take that imprint and create something with it, right? So a lot of times you'll see females, if say they're with a biker, right? All of a sudden they'll start dressing like a biker too. Say they're with a gangster, all of a sudden they might pick up an accent like the gangster. You know what I mean? Like, and it sounds stupid, and some females are like, "No, I don't do that," but I bet you do to some degree. You know, if your husband's really into football, you might start watching football too. You know, and that's why the men are the spiritual head of the house, right? According to the Bible. See, like I said, everything within the Bible, people think it's just like because God's some slaver. He's like, oh, he just wants to keep us. No, he's just telling you how it is. It's like there's not a choice in these things. He's telling you how it is. He's like, this is the way reality is set up, and you can either follow it or try to do it your own way and have a hard fucking life. Men are the masculine, the phallic, the positive, the imprinters, because that's the energy they represent. They're more logical, they're more visual, they're more thought oriented, they're right like and then women are more primal, they're more intuitive, they're the feminine. They create, they're imprinted upon, they're more impressionable, they're more social, you know? They're more about hierarchical structures and shit like that. Men fall into hierarchies a lot easier. When we get in a group of men, we can all naturally tell like who the alpha is, and we kind of all fall in line according to that. You know, women, it's more by consensus, right? They want the man that all the other women want because of his status, right? It's more a consensus. A woman can be influenced by her friends, like, you need to get rid of that guy, right? And that's that social structure, that social pressure, because that's the way their energy is. You know, it's not nothing. It's not a knock against men or women. It's just how things are. And see, when you got the government and shit like that, they're telling you to go against your own nature for a reason because it makes you weaker. It makes you. It allows them to use you easier and take advantage and exploit you easier. And you can believe that or not. You know, that's just a fact. You can believe it or not. I don't care. But you see that, you see it, and then you see men, like, and let's just think about a relationship too, and this is going to tell you, like, whether you're leaking energy, you know? Say, when you're single, you're really happy. And I hear this from people a lot. They're like, oh, when I'm single, I'm happy and da 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 da. But then I get in a relationship and, I'm no longer happy. And it's like, you're not miserable because of the person you're with. You're miserable because you have unresolved shit within you. You know what I mean? It's your own unresolved shit, and when we're not willing to face it a lot of times, what ends up happening is, you know, um, we break off said relationships and then we just hit the reset button and we start our bullshit all over again and think that getting with somebody new is going to solve it, and nobody works through issues or works through problems anymore, because nobody's accountable for their own shit anymore, you know? So if every time, say, a male gets with the female and he becomes really possessive, really controlling and shit like that, it's because he's got some insecurity because in a past relationship, some sort of abuse or trauma happened that he has not resolved. So he's leaking energy to that, right? So that thought form is still alive within his mind and it's still being fed. So every time he gets in a similar situation, that thought form returns and it's powerful. It becomes more powerful. And that's the side effects of it, right? And people don't see it like that. And it's like if dude would just resolve his own shit, he wouldn't have those things going on. But we don't do that. We think, oh, it was her fault because she was a hoe. So if I get with a new girl, then I won't be that way this time. No, you're still going to be the same person. You might not be triggered in the same ways. They might trigger you differently because it's a different combination of energies interacting, but if you didn't take from the experience, learn from yourself, or take the time to heal and cut that cord and disconnect, and then keep that energy completely cut off from you, that way the thought form can't return and feed on you again. And this is why you see people like cheating with their exes and shit like that. It's like you didn't resolve it. And it's like, think about people that like serial cheaters, right? That's a problem within them. It's got nothing to do with the person that they're with ever. They say, oh, well, he's abusive or she's abusive or she doesn't do this or he doesn't do that. No, that's your excuse, right? It's something within you, like your self-worth usually, right? And you have self-worth created through sex is what you associate self-worth with, right? By being desired by multiple people or, you know, and then, people going after these things. It's like they never healed the original wound. And this is like the whole study of like, psychology. That's really what it's really about, right? It's like that psycho analysis of really of that, that energy, right? Those parts of the mind that are wounded or associated with certain, they're going to have certain responses, right? So for every action, there is a reaction. Now, I've got a document here. I want to go to this too. I'm going to flip to this in just a second. That's actually talking about, um, like meme magic and Keck and all of this. Like, and you see this with like the whole political thing, right? And you can see just how powerful this shit is and how it works. I'll show you first, right, some information on the Egyptian deity, right? And then we'll read the abstract, the scientific paper on it, and you'll see like how it actually manifests into real world. The shit's fucking wild, right? Like I'm just telling you, it's wild. And like people think that metaphysics and all this stuff, like I said, is woo woo shit and that it's evil. No, there's nothing wrong with having the knowledge and understanding of how things operate. Like I said, when you start to really, as long as you don't pervert the knowledge, right, and start to use it, and that's the thing, the more knowledge we have, a lot of times it starts to play on our pride. I can't tell you. In spiritual communities, truther communities, they're some of the most arrogant, prideful communities you'll ever find, right? Because you think about it. Think about the terms that they use. They're calling everybody NPCs, normies, and shit like that, right? That don't understand the things that they understand. They feel like they're superior because of the knowledge they have. Right? Knowledge is power, right? And it's pride that go before destruction. Same thing with New Age. New Age plays completely on pride, right? Think about like channeled messages and shit, like telling you you're a star seed and that you were placed here for this special purpose in this special time and that you're a special being. And, it's all about your pride. Stroking that ego, telling you how special and different you are from everybody else. And then think about the Bible and what following God entails. Total opposite. Total opposite. It's like, and remember, if we look at the Bible from not from a religious perspective, but purely from a metaphysical perspective, the Bible takes on a whole new meaning. You start to not see it as like angry, wrathful, vengeful God just wants to be a jealous shit and control everybody, right? And he's got these rules because he just felt like it. No, he gave you that book to show you this is how reality works. This is how the energy works. This is how you're made. This is how you're created. If you go against the blueprint, you will have repercussions. If you want a prosperous life, you want to be prosperous, you want to be happy, you want to be healthy, this is how you do it. And if you do it this way, you're in covenant with the most powerful spirit, the one who created it all. If you do it other ways, then you're not. You're in covenant with the lesser spirits, right? And the spirits that are created. So it's your choice. And he's allowing you the free will. You're choosing whatever you choose by your actions, your thoughts, all of that. You're choosing that every day by the things you do, the things you choose. And it's totally up to you. And and you're allowed to make whatever choice you make. And see, and remember, and then you think about what hell is, it no longer becomes a place of punishment either. It just becomes a place absent of that creator spirit. Period. It's like, oh well, God is the living waters of life. Well, there's no water there. The archons are smokeless fire. It's all fire there. God blew the breath of life into you. There's no air there. And is it because you're being punished? Nope. It's because you chose to be out of covenant with that spirit that creates that air, that water, that all of those good things by your life choice. By default, you chose that. So then in your eternity, that's what you get. You get what you paid for. You got what you asked for. No one made you do it ever. You chose it consciously, whether you think you did or not. And that's why God is so just. There's no mistake in it. He don't make mistakes at all. And that's why he's a he also. Facts. It's a he. Because he's imprinting upon all of us. Because we're made in the image of him. That's why we're his bride. See, it no longer becomes about being sexist and shit like that when you really understand what it all means. It's like, oh, well, of course, that's the phallic energy. It created us. It imposed its will. It impressed upon us its energy. We were made from it. So that's the masculine. We are the yielding. We are the what's being imprinted upon. We are the pride. We're made in the image of this. We are a reflection of this. We are the sons and daughters of God, the children of God, right? He begot us. Like, it makes perfect sense. It's got nothing to do with like being a sexist. It's nothing to do with being wrathful or vengeful. This is what, and think about everything in the Bible now begins to like take on a whole new meaning too. It's like, well, why would he want them to not take any of the gold or any of this when they would conquer these armies that were, the Canaanites and shit like that? Well, think about it. They were completely yoked to a deity, an energy, a thought form, an egregore that through covenant required the sacrifice of their children. Right? It required that innocence, that life force, like we were saying earlier, in order, that pact, that agreement, that exchange. In order for you to get, from Baal, in order for you to get God, the gold and the fertility and all of that, you had to give fertility. You had to give spiritual gold. You know why? Because it's a created entity. They can't do anything else. You cannot go to a created entity and have it any other way because it's not the infinite. It's finite, period. It was made by the Creator. So it will never be able to give you the same deal. You're going to a middleman. It doesn't have the ability to create. That's why demons can't create. They're not that essence. They're not that energy. You're better off to try to do the shit yourself than to go to a demon because you have that energy and they don't. To go to a lesser God in any way, shape, form, or facet is fucking retarded when you understand how it works. You got one God, right? That literally, and think about it here, once again, you're going to see the principles and how they shift and change, right? So you have the occult, right? The New Age, and it's do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, right? It's all through pride, self-exaltation, right? Trying to bend the reality to your will, for selfish gain, always, for power, for money, for lust. That's why they're the 7 deadly sins. Not because God's just an asshole. Because you're perverting the fucking reality, whether you know it or not, to attain something that you're not naturally meant to attain. There's ways to get it, but you're trying to take a shortcut. You're trying to rip off the system, and because of that curve, it comes back and rips you off. In the end, it will always come back on you. I don't care what it is. That's the curve we were talking about. And when you're in covenant with something that was created, guess what? It's not the source. It doesn't have an unlimited source of anything. So any deal you make with it, it needs something in exchange, right? To create that for you. That's why when you're dealing with these spirits, you're offering them herbs, you're offering them blood, you're offering them sacrifices. You're offering them something because they don't have shit to work with if you don't. That's why you don't heap abuse on heavenly beings. Because guess what you're offering them? Abuse. So guess what you get in return? Abuse. It changes everything when you start to see it this way. Like it no longer becomes like this like this thing the world has tried to make it, like this religious thing. It's like religion just loses all meaning to you. You're like, no, no. And then and it takes on new meaning too, of like when you see God, like the love of it. It's like this entity, instead of do what thou will, it's thy will be done. You know why? Because it enslaved itself to us. Think about that. God needs nothing from any of us at all. Nothing from any of the entities in the heavens, in the underworld. But it owns every realm, every being, every entity, and gets nothing in return. It's a slave to everyone and everything. It serves everyone and everything. It is the most humble, lowest in the universe, in creation. Nothing more humble, nothing lower. But it's the highest because it's the lowest. That's the way it works. And that's why, and think about it, that curve in reverse, because it's completely humbled itself, because it's done nothing but sacrifice itself so everything else can have life and live through it. It's the highest, the most powerful because of that. And it seeks no power, doesn't need power, but it has it. And then that starts to take on a whole new meaning. You think, wow, this entity was so selfless. It loved us so much. It gave its own self up so we could exist. And so we could be free from anything else that was created, because these other thought forms are corrupt. They seen the way the system worked. They were before us and they tried to pervert it. And it knew, like, damn, they're fucked. They're broke, right? They're broken. They understood all of this. And it's like, I'm not letting you out of this. You understood exactly how it all works and you still chose to do this. We don't. We have no idea of these things. We don't know these things. That's why we get forgiven for it. We get the out. And you can't tell me that even those entities don't have karma and that it doesn't come back on them, because that's why in the end they're thrown into the lake of fire and destroyed, because all they've done is destroy the entire time they've existed. Those who kill by the sword will die by the sword. And it's fact, you cannot escape it. And it's not because you're in a prison planet and God's a mean God, because that's the nature of creation itself. You couldn't exist without the principles being the way they are. They need the opposition to hold reality together. They need the push and pull. You need friction to create fire. And when you start to see this, it's just it will change you. It will change the way you operate. It'll change the way you think. It'll change the way you see God. You no longer think of it as oppressive and all of that. And when you figure out, when you feel the love of that energy, and I'm telling you, it's a loving, loving, loving energy. When you feel it for real, you don't feel chastisement, not like what you think. It's like a shame, because you understand that it was just pure love that was meant for you. And you feel bad. You know that and that's the thing. That's why God is the only thing that can forgive you. because it's what created everything. So you're actually sinning against it. Whenever you do something wrong, that's why he says, whenever you're doing the least of these, you're doing to me. Come on now, I'm telling you. You start to see it and it'll change change the way you see it all. Whatever you do to the least of these, you're doing to me because I made them. It is me. And you have a true repentance, a true remorse when you understand it, when you've truly met God face to face. And you've had that experience. And, and it says God corrects those he loves. Well, then he loves us all. He loves us all. We're all constantly being corrected, whether we're aware of it or not. I think it should be God corrects those he loves, and those he loves are aware of the correction. Because he loves every single entity. They're all being constantly corrected by the laws. There's no way out of that correction. But it's the awareness of said correction, And if you see it that way too, you see there's no chosen people. Nobody's special. Nobody's chosen. So that shit goes all the way out the window. You see, you're not a special. You're not above nobody. Your knowledge means shit. The same rules apply to you that somebody who's completely ignorant of it all. And that's why he says to harm one of these little ones, right? The people who don't know, right? Take advantage of them. It'd be better to have a millstone thrown around your neck, or to be put around your neck and thrown into the depths of the sea. And guess what? That's exactly what has happened to the fallen. They took advantage of creatures who had no fucking idea what was going on here. And what happened to them? They're put below the waters of the firmament. They're at the depths of the sea with a millstone hung around their neck, in prison, in shackles, in Sheol, in the underworld. It's literally happened to them because they did that exact thing. So you think if you do it to someone in your life, the same shit ain't going to happen to you? God doesn't have to lift a finger. It happens to you automatically. It's built into the program, the simulation, whatever you want to call it. It's built into it. You can't escape it. You do it to yourself. That's why it says you'll judge yourself. That you will judge the angels, because you do. These entities that you're in covenant with that are doing that, you're passing judgment on them through these laws. through the reality. It happens all on its own. It's all on autopilot. Like it's fucking mind blowing to me. Like I'm serious. Like it's mind blowing to me when I think about it. Like it blows my brains completely out of my skull. Like I think, wow, what entity, what consciousness, what creation, being is capable of something like this? Like how, and you wonder why these angels and the elect and all of this are just constantly singing the praises in heaven of this creator. You see why now? You're like, whoa. This thing made everything specifically for everyone, for every single thing that's alive. Like it's specifically catered to all of us individually. It's like, damn, how magnificent of an entity, of a creature, of a being, of a creator, of a God is this? Like, there's nothing that you can compare it to. There's no injustice, whether we think there is or not, there's none. all energy balances out in the end. Everything we do to ourselves. The angels found that out the hard way, and now we are too. That's why he says, exalt yourself and be humbled, and humble thyself and be exalted, because that's the way it's made. Might is not right in this creation. And see, and as we get closer, and this is the wild part, the reason stuff took longer back in the day, you know, for us to connect to, right? Karma wise. The reason that, because we were further away from the end point. So so think about it as like lightning and thunder. Let me find this document here real fast. Right, guys. Lightning and thunder, right? I think this is it. We'll get into this in a second. But we have the sound, before, the light before the sound. The light is a spirit, and then the sound is matter. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to find this document. Shit, can't find this thing. Hold on. All right, yeah, here we go. So you think about the light traveling faster than sound, right? So light is it's the spirit, right? Everything's happening in the spirit first, right? Well, consciousness gives creation, spirit gives creation to the physical. So as we get closer to the end point, right? The end, the end of the world, in essence, is the two catching up to each other. That's why knowledge is increasing at the end. We're getting closer to catching up with, the sound is getting closer to catching up with the light. You see lightning, then you hear thunder immediately. Where the thunder? Down here. In the heavens is the lightning. That's why if you think about like all the gods, right, they always had the thunderbolt. It starts to make sense. That's why in the physical, they'd have the shofars to crumble the walls. It would sound, right? And as we get closer to the end, it's catching up. We're accelerating towards an end point. So we're seeing instant karma now. The subconscious, which collects the information, right? Because the sun is giving off infinite information. That's what creation actually is. That's what the universe actually is this giant computer of information. Everything that we're perceiving and receiving, right? This frequency is just data. It's information. We're made up of information, all of it. And as we're receiving this information from the sun, which I believe is like a portal, really, to the higher heavens, the sun, I believe on the, if you think about a black hole, a sun would be like a white hole, right? Black hole, time slows down, right? Like it's matter, all that being sucked and shot into the other side of it, like a wormhole. Right on the other side of it is probably the higher heaven, and then like a sun is the higher heavens, right? The luminaries from heaven pouring into this reality, giving off energy, frequency, information to this reality. And the sun is, that's why it's always represented as a sun god, Ra, the son of God, all of this. Like, that's the portal to heaven. It's just my opinion, but it's giving off this infinite awareness, this information, right? And our shadow, our image, our unconscious collects that and stores that information, right? Because it's so much that we can't perceive it all at once, right? It's so much bandwidth that it would blow our heads apart. So we need it channeled into like a storage container, and then we download it and process it. Come to it slowly, because it's just too much for us at once. That's why, think about it. Anybody who ever is like approaches the throne of God, what happens to them? They fall on their fucking face. They can't even look up at it. It's too much. The angels can't even be in the same room as him. He's too much. It will destroy. They die. It will destroy you to look at God. It's too much. It will incinerate you. It's that much energy at one time. It will eviscerate your existence. You're a particle of that. And think of how powerful you are. Then think about how a bigger particle of that, like a planet or something like that, how much more powerful than you that is. Now think about something that made, then think about a galaxy. Then think about the universe, and then think about the thing that actually made the universe. It's like, you can't even approach that. You can't even be in the same fucking realm as that. Your being can't absorb that much information, that much energy. You can't live through it. Because remember, it's a masculine. It imprints, right? It just superimposes itself over. You would cease to exist. It wants you to have your own individuality, your own existence. That's why it doesn't do that to you. So it's made it's magnetic. You can't even get close to it because you die if you did. And think about how considerate of an energy that is to do that. We're like, fuck, man. Why is this God so distant and far? Deadbeat dad. No, you stupid fuck. Like it can't be around you. That's why he stands with his foot on the vault of the universe. The universe is destroyed. Think about it. Why do you think the world ends when he finally comes? Because it can't stand under the pressure of his glory. Nothing can. That's why the skies recede like a scroll. Islands and mountains are removed from their place. Mountains burn like fucking candle wax. Nothing is left. And then why do you think there's no more tears and all your tears are wiped away and there's no more sadness or anything? Because nothing is in equal opposition to it. See how we have that polarity to hold this reality and existence together? It doesn't need that. It's a self-existing entity. It doesn't need opposition to exist. It does that for us to have a physical matter. That's the only reason it's there. That buffer zone, right? It's so we can hold together in a physical space. It doesn't need that. Everything is immediately converted to light as soon as it enters into the realm of it. So that's why all the evil ceases to exist. It gets thrown in the lake of fire. It's burned away. It's transmuted instantly because everything becomes a part of it. And all of the angels and everything is singing its praises because it's all assimilated to it. So it's singing that frequency. You know, because it's all being assimilated just by being in the vicinity of it. It's like when you really start to like wrap your head around this shit, it's like, whoa, like what are we dealing with here? We will never understand. And see, and this is to me, this is one of the things that really makes it mind blowing. It says, that the mysteries of heaven will finally be revealed at the end of all of this. And this is why I think so. It's like, because it's like we'll finally get it. Like when we're in the presence, because it will become a part of it. So we'll finally be able to understand it. We already were a part of it. We are a part of it. We never were anything else. It's the veil of forgetfulness for a reason. It's the illusion of separation, the illusion of individuality, the illusion of all of this. This is how God, I think, probably became God. It's like it lived every possible experience, every possible reality, every possible everything. That's how it created omnipresence, omnipotence, right? Like, that's why we're the slave race of the gods. We're the little nodes on this universal organism, right? And these nodes, these eyes on this universal organism, and think about the cherubim that's covered in eyes, right? We're the eyes on the cherubim, right? And God has the cherubim and the seraphim. He's explaining his being to us by telling us how the heavens are with the 24 elders and all of this. It's explaining the dynamics of it, in layman's terms to us because we can't understand it, but it's trying for what we can understand. We'll never conceive it till we're a part of it, but I digress. But we're all one of these eyes, and we're all having this individual experience as one possible strand or possibility in this infinite ocean of possibilities. God's the infinite ocean of possibilities, and we're one of the ripples. So we're never separate from it, no matter what. Some waves got to roll, some waves got to crash. There's whirlpools, there's all types of creatures in this ocean, but nonetheless, the ocean is one large organism. It's one large body of water. You can take bottles, fill those bottles up with that ocean water, which is essentially what's happened here. That's what we are. We're just containers of that ocean water, right? That spirit. And throw them out in the sea, and they're all floating, this ocean full of bottles, full of water. Right? Even though there's a container around it, it's still the same water. It's still out there floating in the same ocean. Still under the same laws. There's just that, that buffer in between it, that separation. It's an illusion of individuality because one day that bottle is going to break. And then it's going to go right back into the mass that it came, the large body it came from. I hope this is making sense. I do. Now we're going to move over here. Because I think this is important, and people can see, the political stuff, where this shit comes from. You know, Kek, the god of darkness. Kek or Kakhet. In Egyptian mythology, Kek and Kakhet hold to unique and mysterious place, known as the deities of darkness, obscurity, and the night. They were part of the Ogdoad of Hermopolis, and ancient cosmogony that explained the origins of creation. Unlike the more popular gods such as Ra, Osiris, Isis, Kek, and Kakhet existed in the shadowy space before time itself began. They're chaos in the abyss. And you wonder why they think Donald Trump's the last president. Think about what he's represented by chaos. And you wonder why there's so much division and the world's gone fucking crazy. They symbolize not evil, but the limitless void and uncertainty that existed before the rising of the sun and the birth of the ordered world. The Ogdoad, four male, female pairs representing the elemental qualities of chaos, was a belief system that thrived in Hermopolis. Each pair represented dual aspects of primordial existence. Nun and Nunet symbolized the watery abyss. Amun and Amunet represented hiddenness. He and Hohe embodied infinity, while Kek and Kakhet personalized the cosmic darkness. Together, these 8 deities form the foundation of creation itself, preparing the way for the emergence of Ra, the sun god. Depictions of Kek and Kakhet reflect their dual nature in Egyptian art. The male deities of the Ogdoad, including Kek, were often shown with the heads of frogs, while the female deities, such as Kakhet, were represented with serpent heads. This imagery tied them to the fertile waters of the Nile and the mystery of the hidden within chaos. The frog, with its association and transformation and emergence from water, symbolized potential and rebirth. The serpent, meanwhile, was linked to mystery, concealment, and cyclical renewal. These forms made Kek and Kakhet guardians of the thresholds between night and day, chaos and order, death and rebirth. They were also associated with directions in the cosmic map of the Ogdoad. Kek and Kakhet were linked with the south, with the interplay of darkness and light, and was believed to shape the balance of creation. Their physical traits highlight their roles as liminal figures embodying the mystery of what cannot be seen, yet always present. Think about it. Darkness and light, they represent that. And then think about how the world feels now, like this battle, like good versus evil, like, you know, it's like the cosmic story plays out, whether we're aware of it or not. We are not in control here. Kek and Kakhet belong to the Ogdoad, literally meaning the eightfold, a primordial group of deities from Hermopolis. Unlike later Egyptian myths that centered on family drama among the gods, the Ogdoad were conceptual, representing the forces of existence itself. And remember, when we look at like the deities, and we've done this in this channel many times, those primordials were the first creation, right? And then we're the Titans, and then we're the Olympians, right? And then we're humans, you know? But they represented the beginning, you know, Gaia and Uranus, right? And then you think of like the 4 archangels or the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? That, you see, these are the 4. And they're called eightfold because they have masculine and feminine. Now, before the world came into being, the universe was thought to be a chaotic sea known as Noon. With the sea lived the Ogdode. And notice I said that it was like a large ocean, right? And that's what they believe heavens are, right? Is this the waters above the firmament? It's the seas. That's where maritime law and all of that comes from. That's why there's space ships and all of that, right? They're ships. They're sailing on the waters of the firmament. You know, darkness. What did it say? Hold on. Infinity. Before the world came into being, the universe was thought to be a chaotic sea known as Noon. Within the sea lived the Ogdode, embodying darkness, infinity, hiddenness, and the primordial waters. Ket and Coquette were the masculine and feminine principles of darkness, complementing each other in eternal balance. According to myth, from this infinite darkness emerged a cosmic lotus flower, floating on the waters. From the lotus bloomed Ra, the sun god, who brought light and life to the cosmos. With his arrival, the Ogdode stepped back into the shadows, continuing to dwell in the underworld but supporting the balance of creation. Kek and Coquette thus represent the eternal backdrop to existence, the night that allows the dawn to shine. The names Kek and Coquette came from the ancient Egyptian word Kiku, which translates directly as darkness. Hieroglyphic variations show the ligature of the sky symbol with a staff, emphasizing their connection to cosmic obscurity, right? The staff, that's the phallic symbolism. So, and that's the masculine. Kak is sometimes transliterated as kuk or kiku, while coquette appears as coquette or kiket. The feminine form of Kek's name simply added the et, right? Ending a common marker for female deities in the Egyptian language, especially their shadowy roles. Their names were not associated with evil. Instead, they were neutral forces of the cosmos, representing the necessary balance of the hiddenness and light. Kek and Coquette's power lay in their dominion over the unseen. Kek embodied the absence of light, the mystery of what lies beyond perception, and the unknown chaos before creation. And think about the entire Trump movement. It's the chaos before creation. It's like, and remember, Maria Abramovich, right? You wonder why she likes Donald Trump so much and all this. This is why, right? She knows what it represents. She's a fucking spirit cooker and a super, advanced occultist. This magus, this magician, right, representing the chaos, the original primordial chaos before the light comes, before the awakening. Right, so it shakes, divides, right? Like it's the hiddenness, all the hiddenness is being brought to the light. This is all of the chaos and craziness before something is birthed. And the new human is being birthed out of this chaos. The new age is being birthed out of this chaos. And that's why you see this great awakening happening. The calm before the storm. Doesn't mean that fucktard QAnon shit, right? All these pedos in our underground pedophilia network and we're taking them down, guys. Stupid bastards. It's not, By the way, how's that going? You guys still trusting the plan, waiting on all that shit? It's the difference between the exoteric and the esoteric. It's like this is the part of humanity. These are the last days. This is, like I said, as we accelerate, this is when the physical is catching up. The sound, the thunder, and the lightning. So it's all in the chaos, in the hiddenness, and it's all being exposed. And it's like And because of that, we're awakening to the reality of things, and knowledge is increasing because the information and the bandwidth to accept said information is increasing as well. And as that happens, the presence of God gets stronger as well. And think about the Hopi talking about how people, like when this last, stand of chaos happens, that, men will just disappear like smoke and shit. Like it all starts to make sense. It's like once the presence has like withdrawn, God's came, and like the only thing that's left, the darkness can't hold itself together and it'll just fade out and cease to exist. Because that creative force that actually animated it all will be withdrawn. That's your rapture right there, right? Two are in the field and one is taken. Taken means killed because you're no longer physically here. You're gone, bruh. In Egyptian cosmology, Kek played a role in guiding Ra's solar bark at night, helping usher the sun through the darkness so that it could rise again at dawn. Calquette, in contrast, was associated with twilight, bringing the evening into being as day gave way to night. Together, they marked the transitions of the sun's eternal journey, ensuring balance between illumination and the shadow. Their connection to twilight is particularly symbolic. Twilight is neither fully light nor fully dark. It is a liminal space where opposing forces mingle. As mediators, Keck and Calquette represented the eternal balance between order and chaos, life and death, visibility and obscurity. Unlike Ra, Isis, and Osiris, Keck and Calquette did not have a major temples or widespread worship. They were not personal gods invoked in daily life, but rather cosmic forces acknowledged in rituals and funerary texts. Priests sometimes called upon them to aid in maintaining balance or to protect travelers in the underworld. However, their influence has endured in surprising ways. In the modern era, the name Kek has found an unexpected place in internet culture. The term originated as a gaming slang for LOL, derived from Korean online games like World of Warcraft. Over time, it became connected with the frog meme figure Pepe the Frog, with some online subcultures humorously linking Kek to an ancient Egyptian frog-headed god. The ironic association gave rise to the idea of meme magic, where Kek was jokingly created with influencing world events through internet memes. Although this modern use of Kek is far removed from Egyptian mythology, it reflects the same fascination with the unseen and mysterious forces shaping reality. Just as Keck once represented the unknown darkness before creation, he now symbolizes, for some, the unpredictable power of the digital age. Isn't that fucking nuts? And see, this is just proving what I'm saying. The egregores, the thought forms. This is why you see like political movements and all this shit. Why they are the way they are. Why they're you know they're ran the way they're ran. Let me try to find this here. I've got this is the Fatima. No, I don't want this. Hold on. I've got an abstract on this. It's very interesting. So I gotta find it. I think it's right here. No, this is Nostradamus. There we go. The Magical Theory of Politics, Meme Magic, the Cult of Keck, and How to Topple an Egregore. The election of the 45th President of the United States set in motion a hidden war in the world of the occult. From the meme-filled underworld of alt-right dominated image boards to a widely publicized binding spell against Trump and his supporters, the social and ideological divides ripping the American social fabric apart are mirrored by witches, magicians, and other esotericists fighting each other with magical means. The article identifies key currents and developments and attempts to make sense of the wider phenomena of why and how the occult becomes a political resource. The focus is on the alt-right's emerging online esoteric religion, the increasingly enchanted notion of meme magic, and the open confrontation between different magical paradigms that has ensued since Trump's election. It brings attention to the competing views of magical efficacy that have emerged as material and political stakes increase, and seeks to theorize the religionizing tendency of segments of the alt-right online as partly spontaneous and partially deliberate attempt to create collective effervescence and galvanize a movement around a distinctly non-legalistic and non-traditional charismatic authority. Special focus is given to the ways in which the politicized magic of both the left and the right produce effect networks that motivate political behaviors through the mobilization of most aversive emotions. Oops. Now, after we check out this, abstract and look at this, man, which is to me is fascinating. I'll show you too, and this is just showing you how powerful the meme magic is, like the Illuminati card game, and how you can see it played out in popular culture as well, and in the political realm especially. Kind of bring it all together. And a lot of people have been sucked under, dealing with these entities, dealing with this subject in particular, all the pedogate stuff, like the Pizzagate, all of this. Like, people have been killed for these things, because they're engaging with these energies and have experienced terrible, terrible stuff, Um, as a result, it's like, I feel like, the spirit behind some of these movements and some of this stuff, they're really dark, dark energies. They truly are. So, and it makes me think of like, one of the people that come to mind, and I've mentioned her like in the last podcast or two, is Tracy Twyman, right? Who is exposing just this stuff exactly, right? Like the pedo gay, organ harvesting, human trafficking. And as soon as she jumped into that world, Isaac Cappy, that's another one. Like, these people are gone, for fucking with this energy, these entities, this consciousness, you know. And a lot of people, like I feel like, in my opinion, I was spared from death. I would rather be discredited than dead, and that's what I think. That's how I was spared. That's honestly how I feel I was spared from dying too, with a lot of these other people that was dabbling in this shit. The result of the 2016 American presidential election sent shockwaves through political establishments across the world, but it also marked the escalation of a veritable magical war in the occult community, fighting over the 45th president of the United States and the future of the American Republic with the means of spells, rituals, and means. And remember, he's president number 45. 4 plus 5 is 9, and 47. 4 plus 7 is 11. He is the 9/11 president. And remember, those twin towers fell and there was erected a giant fucking needle in their place, right? And then we had all the, the COVID shit. Like, it's so amazing to me. And it's not, once you understand like how all of it works, it's like it's really just, it makes sense, but it's nonetheless, astonishing to watch the physical reality manifest and reflect what happens in the spiritual. It's amazing. And we're multi-dimensional beings, so we're existing in multiple dimensions at the same time, whether we're aware of it or not. And this is, with the collective unconscious and shit. When you get into like Carl Jung, and a lot of people thought Carl Jung was a quack and a deceiver and shit like that, but it's like a lot of his work was spot the fuck on. This is why the hero's journey and, mythologies and all of this stuff, like we see the story of humanity played out in the stars. We see it played out, in mythologies, in the subconscious. We see it played out. Our organs are represented by the fucking zodiac. I don't know if you know that, but our organs correlate to the zodiac. Literally, the inner organs of our body, the heel of our feet correlates to this stuff too. It's like every part of us it's in every dimensional space, right? Every space. And that's why everything plays out in every dimension. It'll play out in the physical, it'll play out geographically, it'll play out individually, internally, biologically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, collectively, and astrologically. And I've shown this over the years. I've tried to, and it was a lot harder to explain back in the day than it is now. People have come so much further. They're actually unable, because we see everything in a linear fashion. Even though we're multidimensional beings, our primary focus is in the physical linear space. And I've kind of heard it put like this. It's like, it's like drawing a stick man and trying to explain to the stick man, like the reality of the person that drew him. He's on that flat piece of paper, and that's us. We're existing on the flat piece of paper right now. So it's hard to understand, like what's outside of the piece of paper. We see it all as flat. So our understanding is the flatness, right? It's how we see it. It's the only way we can see it and understand it is that linear, on the piece of paper. Just as the primaries and the campaign have mobilized deep-seated political, cultural, and value differences in the American population, so too pre-existing tensions among pagans, occultists, and magicians were activated in social media, unlike their Muggle world compatriots. However, the occult demographic was boosted in repertoire of incendiary attacks with magic. The present article is an attempt at making sense of the unfolding magical war. 3 questions guide the effort. What are the belligerents of the magical war? Who are the belligerents of the magical war? What magic are they doing and how do they view its efficacy? Why are people pursuing politics with magical means in the first place? While the first 2 questions are straightforward, who and what questions the third explanatory why question is more ambitious. I argue that a sufficient answer must proceed by seeing the magical war not simply as an internal political dispute in the magical community, although it is that as well, but rather as a response to a broader crisis of political legitimacy that has engulfed the United States and is sensed in many other Western countries as well. In a nutshell, I will argue that the magical theory of politics, undergirding both pro and anti-Trump belligerents from the 4chan trollers turned chaos magicians To activist witches hexing the president, every new moon can be understood as enchanted interpretations of social forces that are typically unleashed during anti establishment political mobilization in times when political legitimacy is fracturing. I will draw on two classical sociological concepts to make my case, namely Durkheim's idea of collective effervescence and the Weberian notion of charisma. In addition, the concept of effective networking, inspired in equal measure by effective neuroscience and actor network theory, highlights the important role that emotional associations distributed and shared via social media plays in whipping up collective effervescence that, on the one hand, affords translation into theories of magical efficacy and the appropriate magical solutions, and on the other, can be transformed into political capital and appropriate voting behavior when invested in charismatic political figure. Taken together, these theoretical tools may not only offer insights into how Trumpism turned esoteric and spurred its own occultist insurgency after Trump became president, it also points towards a general theory of magic as a political resource in times of crisis. Make sure we're still going here. Yeah, looks like we are. I think we still got the screen share and all that, right? Yeah, looks like it. All right. Now, the belligerent resistance and reaction of magical means. Now, we may conveniently distinguish the belligerents in the magical war of the 45th POTUS by distinguishing three camps: the cult of Keck, the magic resistance, the magic reaction. That is a heuristic classification only. It does not pick out stable, close knit social groups that can be clearly identified and demarcated. Instead, it points to three phases of the conflagration that stand in a chronological and dialectical relationship to one another. Taken in a broad sense, the Code of Keck here refers to a religionizing turn in online alt-right culture, primarily image boards like 4chan and 8chan, but also in a network of right-wing blogs such as the Atlantic Centurion, The Right Stuff, and Countercurrents. This development started already during the primaries in 2016. The Magic Resistance refers to the highly publicized attempt by people disaffected to Trump's victory to use spells and rituals to bind the president and his supporters. It developed in the wake of the election result, and it had its public breakthrough amidst rising media attention in early 2017. Finally, these anti-Trump efforts have sparked magic reaction, attempting to unite Trump-supporting magicians, occultists, and alternative spirituality practitioners of all stripes in an effort to thwart the magic resistance spells. While the chronology is clear, it is often harder to identify, locate, and quantify individuals and groups involved with the efforts. In part, this reflects the nature of the most important theater of war: social media. The magic resistance is primarily organized around a collection of hashtags. Hashtag magic resistance, hashtag bind Trump. As for the cult of Keck, its very existence outside of the strand of means is debatable. And the authorial intent of the anonymous posters who have invented it is ambiguous at best. What follows then is merely a rough sketch of key developments along with basic historical contextualization and identification of some individuals and texts that are illustrative of the developments at hand. We will enter the story at Trump's election and emergence of the magic resistance and its reaction. In the next section, we'll work our way back towards to see how Trumpism turned esoteric via the alt-right strategic orientation toward meta-politics and a post-Ironic interest in chaos magic. The magic resistance synchronized spellcasting to bind Donald J. Trump. That witchcraft had entered the American political landscape first became common knowledge on February 16, 2017. On this date, Michael M. Hughes, an author, lecturer on the occult, published A Spell to Bind Donald Trump and All Those Who Abet Him on the online publishing platform Medium. The text outlined a ritual to be performed at midnight on every waning crescent moon until he, Trump, is removed from office. The first such event taking place on February 24, 2017. To perform the simple ritual, the practitioner would need an unflattering photo of Trump, a Tower Tarot card, and a tiny stub of an orange candle. In addition to various ingredients representing the four elements and other magical principles, the practitioner should write Donald J. Trump on the orange candle stub, arrange items in a pleasing circle, say a prayer for protection, and invoke blessings from their preferred spirit or deity. Experienced magicians were additionally instructed to perform an appropriate banishing ritual in the incantation that follows. The practitioner would implore the gods of their choice to bind Donald J. Trump so that his malignant words may fail utterly. Bind him so that he shall not break our polity, usurp our liberty, or fill our minds with hate, confusion, fear, or despair. And bind too all those who enable his wickedness, and those whose mouths speak his poisonous lies. Bind them in chains, bind their tongues, bind their works, bind their wickedness. The unflattering photo of Trump is then lit from the flame of the orange candle and held above an ashtray until it crumbles to the dust as the practitioner, with increasing passion, speaks the words. And with the so mote it be, so mote it be, so mote it be. Now, with the orange candle, right, that orangish yellowish color and like witchcraft and stuff like represents like the heart chakra, right? So it's like killing the heart of the and I know he's, represented like as the orange man, but so it's like killing the heart of the movement is what it's, that's what the principle of that I believe was to do. It's binding, and killing the heart of the movement behind him, taking the gas out of what he's saying, and taking the hearts of the people out of it as well. And think about it. There was all of the impeachment stuff. So I mean it had some effect, right? It truly did. Hugh's ritual quickly gathered steam on social media, shared with the hashtags Magic Resistance, Bind Trump. It was picked up by the mass media after singer Lana Del Rey tweeted a cryptic picture of herself on February 23rd, dressed in black and doing a hand sign in front of a red background with the text, "At the stroke of midnight, February 24th, March 26th, April 24th, May 23rd, listing the dates of the upcoming new moons." With the pop star's endorsement, magazines such as Elle, Dazed, Vanity Fair, and Vox soon published stories on the Bind Trump movement. When Michael Hughes got together with friends to perform the first binding ritual in Baltimore on February 24th, it was, as he later put it, binding rituals have continued to be performed on every new moon since the initial event in February 2017. Just how many are participating is hard to assess, given the distributed and decentralized structure of those events. Rituals are performed individually in small groups and occasionally in public as visible form of protest and performance. Hughes' estimated monthly participation in the thousands. The official Magic Resistance Facebook is more than 3,200 members at the time of this writing, but this, of course, is no reliable indication of how many participates in the synchronized spellcasting. If use of the movement's hashtags give a sound indication, it would appear that engagement has waned since the initial enthusiasm in early 2017. A keyhole search on the hashtag Magic Resistance and Bind Trump in 2018 revealed that fewer than 15 Twitter users deployed the hashtag in a random week, although the reach of their tweets, i.e. unique users exposed to them, are considerably higher at close to 30,000. Similarly, an analysis through the branding tool RightTag shows how the two tags are related to the other. Much more successful hashtags such as Impeach Trump or The Resistance gives an indication that despite the media hype in 2017, the Magic Resistance remains a marginal subsection of a much bigger demographic of political discontents. Regardless of its actual outreach, the magical resistance is best described as a social media coordinated protest movement leveraging the trappings of magic and witchcraft to mobilize resistance against the incumbent U.S. government. By emphasizing the trappings of magic, I am not suggesting the sincerity of belief in magical efficacy is entirely absent. The movement has sparked theological debates among pagans and magicians over issues such as the ethics of casting binding spells, how the efficacy of the spells are mediated, i.e., whether demonic entities might be involved, and of course, whether the effect of the casting is likely to be as intended or instead produce a backlash. And you know what? It definitely has produced a backlash, right? Like that, the left has all but fallen, you know. Nevertheless, there is little doubt that the Magic Resistance initial mobilization in the winter of 2017 was primarily driven by the striking images, material objects, magical circles, tarot cards, and other external trappings of magic photographed, filmed, and shared in social media. The aesthetics of magic carried the movement's reach far outside the limited population of practicing magicians. The driving force here, I submit, is not so much the literal belief in the magical efficacy of binding spells as the successful engagement of people's emotions through the subversive power associated with magic and witchcraft in the popular imagery. The magic reaction. The Golden Dawn goes pro Trump. The rise of the magic resistance in the winter of 2017 also spurred a counter movement of Trump supporting occultists attempting to thwart the binding spells and empower the president. The magic reaction has been spearheaded by David Griffin and Leslie McQuade, the Nevada-based leaders of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which Leslie McQuade is supposed to come on the channel. So interesting. Hereafter, one of the many successor organizations to the influential late 19th century magical order, the Golden Dawn, is Griffin and McQuade's entry that transformed the magical engagement with U.S. politics in a multilateral conflict between occultists of different stripes. It was also Griffin who started labeling the conflict a magic war. In order to understand why Griffin and McQuade have taken this active role and adopted martial metaphors for describing it, it is necessary to have a brief look at Griffin's background. Griffin has been a controversial figure in the magical scene since the 90s. He appears to have been initiated in the Golden Dawn tradition in 92 by Chris Monastrey, formerly Patricia Ann Bayman, one of Israel Regardie's former disciples and lover, and elevated to the degree of 6 and 4 in 1994. Griffin's growing involvement decided with a conflict between Monastrey and Sheikh Cicero, another Regardie student and the founder in the late 1970s of the Regardie line of the Golden Dawn. It is notable that the notion of the magic war was already very much a part of how Griffin experienced the Golden Dawn schism. For example, he would attribute the Northridge earthquake in January 94 that devastated Los Angeles, where Griffin and Monastery were at the time, to a magical attack by Cheek Cicero. And Israel Regardie, he's written many books on the Golden Dawn and the occult. So, and I believe he had something to do with Aleister Crowley too. I'm trying to think of like what his connection was to him, but he's written many books. He's probably one of the most accomplished writers when it comes to the Golden Dawn. I've read a lot of his work. Shortly after Monastery tasked Griffin, who had been residing part-time in Sweden with his Zen partner since the late 80s, with opening Isis Newt Temple in Stockholm from the European base. Griffin led the monastery line's efforts to counter Cicero's push toward trademarking the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn brand in the U.S. by seeking a parallel trademark under European legislation. The effort succeeded in 1998 with the result that the Golden Dawn brand was split between two legislations: the Monastery Griffin line, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and Europe Cicero's line, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Inc., in the US. Griffin had a strong internet presence since the late 90s. The so-called Golden Dawn flame wars that erupted around the schisms and legal battles were conducted largely online through the exchange of incendiary attacks and allegations on websites, forums, and blogs, while mutual attacks between War and Golden Dawn factions have muted over the previous decade. Griffin has continued to pursue an aggressive social media strategy. His Golden Dawn blog, which has attracted more than 1.4 million readers since it opened in 2009, about 175,000 readers a year, contains a mixture of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn announcements, occult instruction videos, and personal attacks on people in the occult community with whom Griffin does not get along. Since the 2016 presidential campaign, these elements have become increasingly mixed with political content and conspiracy theories. Griffin was emphatically anti-Clinton during the campaign, publishing a number of posts on the blog attacking mainstream media, milking the Podesta emails leak, and alleging that contacts between Hillary's inner circle and the KKK. These posts often appear motivated by the fact that the rivaling personalities in the occult displayed pro-Clinton stances on social media. Since Trump's election, however, the anti-Hillary sentiments have developed into decisively pro-Trump stance. Once again, however, the main catalyst of the development appears to be a reaction to what other magicians are doing. In this case, Michael Hughes' binding spell, starting on February 24th, the date of the first new moon ritual. Griffin published the first of a string of posts attacking the Bind Trump movement, which he described with increasing fantastical language as a gang of black magicians, traitors, Satanists, terrorists, and crypto-fascist witches, whose real objective is to establish a global world empire. Griffin's response to the threatening army of witches was to mobilize a broad front of pro-Trump spiritual practitioners, forming an interfaith coalition of diverse magical and religious practices to thwart the magic resistance efforts. The following call was published on March 4th, 2017. The Order of the Golden Dawn are calling on all believers in spirituality, manifesting magic, the law of attraction, prayer, and even positive thinkers, regardless of their race, religion, affiliation, beliefs, class, or creed, to join in efforts to combat the potential threat presented by the Gathering of the Witches event by synchronizing our efforts through prayer, white magic, etc., at the same times of their rites. Later in the spring, Griffin and McQuaid offered an online black magic self-defense workshop, marketed particularly to regular people who might feel implicated by the magic resistance targeting of all those who abet Trump. In May, Griffin registered the domain magicwars.com, which collects material related to the standoff. The website has a download link to magical self-defense material, but consists mainly of YouTube videos, including conspiracist material from Alex Jones' InfoWars channel. As with the magical resistance, it's hard to estimate how many participate in Griffin's counterspell efforts and what exactly they are doing, in contrast to the magic resistance fixed but open source ritual template. Griffin's invitation is entirely non-committal, inviting practitioners from different traditions to do whatever is right for them. Prayer, positive thinking, law of attraction, and magic are all applicable as long as the intention of the workings remain the same: to counter the witches and protect the president. In addition to private rituals, however, Griffin and McQuaid have also performed a public ritual at the Donald Trump Star on Hollywood Boulevard. This theatrical spell to liberate humanity and break enchantments was filmed and published on the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn YouTube channel, occupying a place between magic and performance counter protests in a public space, not dissimilar in method from public demonstrations performed in the name of the magic resistance. The cult of tech. The emergence of a post-ironic magico-political religion. Before the war between magicians, there was a cult of Keck. best described as a place where occultism interests with online image board culture and the alt-right. The background of the cult of Keck lies in the attempt by a group of 4chan users trolling politically correct liberals with internet memes. Articulate participants tend to couch this weaponization of memes as a form of meta-politics, denoting the strategy of pursuing political goals by targeting general culture rather than entering parliamentary politics directly. Metapolitics is now a long-standing strategy. Extreme right, or the extreme right originating far-right ideologues' appropriation of Antonio Gramsci's theory of hegemony. A prominent example is the publishing of Arctos Media, created in 2009 through a merger of the small Danish publisher Integral Tradition Publishing and the Swedish old school neo-Nazi publisher Nordiska Forlaget. Arctos exemplifies the rebranding of right-wing extremism through a rapprochement with traditionalist spirituality and an emphasis on terms like civilization, culture, identity, this sort of spiritual entrism as an element of the cult of Keck discourse as well. The metapolitical use of memes to spread far-right content to the mainstream is a key context for the cult of Keck's emergence. But its origins are stranger and, in a sense, more magical than that. Through a string of coincidences and contingencies that could probably only have taken place on an image board, where hundreds of thousands of messages are posted anonymously at a high pace every day, elements of modern occultism were weaved into the emerging alt-right's blend of tactics, ideology, rationalizations of unfolding events. The result was the birth of an online religion situated somewhere between parody, make-believe, meta-political strategy, genuine messianic expectations, and magic. The leading Cult of Keck website, thecultofkeck.com, refers to itself as post-ironic, which seems an apt description for much of what goes on in this corner of the internet. The tone of irony and satire is central to the movement's activities, but its very persistence, aggression, and focused cultivation of negative effect betray underlying moods and motivations that are anything but playful. Pepe the Frog, the apotheosis of a meme, the immediate background of the cult of Keck lies in a key event of the 4chan meme war, namely the hostile takeover of the anthropomorphic frog meme, Pepe. A timeline can roughly be reconstructed as follows. In 2005, Pepe appears as a character in Matt Fury's online comic book Boys Club. By 2010, the character has become a popular motif for memes across platforms such as MySpace, 4chan, and Tumblr. In 2016, a group of users on the 4chan poll channel, standing for politically incorrect, which I love that channel, as a hotbed for alt-right themes like misogyny, anti-Semitism, white power, and blood and soil nationalism attempted to hijack Pepe by systemically producing memes which associate the frog with extreme right views. Examples given depicting him with a swastika armband as a concentration camp guard, making racist slurs, and so forth, which is funny. Which, by the way, just on a side note, I was I was walking across the street before I did the live, and I was listening to something, and there was like a whole group of like black people standing there, like waiting on a bus. And the podcast I was listening to started like talking about Nazis and shit. They were just looking at me. I looked like the biggest fucking racist sack of shit in the world. And I'm sitting there laughing because it's like, geez, this is fucking funny. I look so shitty right now. And they were just kind of like looking at each other like, what is wrong with this dude? He's just walking in the middle of the crowd listening to this. The campaign reached a breakthrough in September 2016 when the Anti Defamation League included the cartoon frog in its database of hate symbols. Although the ADL clarified that the meaning of the meme is not stable and must always be interpreted in context, politically incorrect users have largely succeeded in filling this empty signifier with very particular political connotations. But it gets weirder still. 2016 was also the year when the anthropomorphic frog meme transmuted into the image of the Egyptian god Ket. The apotheosis also took place on Polankin, according to commentators who have followed the development being described in three stages. The first stage is contingent on gamer slang originating in World of Warcraft, where the word Kek emerged as a substitute for LOL, laughing out loud, due to an algorithm that scrambles the chatter of opposing teams into gibberish. Given those close connections between the politically incorrect and gamer culture, Keck therefore became embedded in peppy memes and connected with shit posting. That is, posting huge amounts of ironic, insulting, and ridiculously, and usually intentionally poor content more generally, which I absolutely love shit posting. The next step was a discovery by politically incorrect users that Kek is also the name of one of the 8 gods of the Egyptian Old Kingdom Agdo theology. More specifically, he, she, both male, female forms existed, was associated with primordial chaos and darkness, and typically represented the head of a snake, a cat, or a frog. Finally, the dimly sensed frog god of chaos and memes was connected to Trump through a particular form of playful superstition on 4chan. And if you think about the head of a snake, a cat, or a frog, what is it? What god is that? Which one is it, man? I don't think it's Astaroth. I'm trying to think of the demon that is the man. Which is the demon? Anybody in the chat know which is the demon? That's the man, the frog, and the cat. I think he's a man, a frog, and a cat. Man, a toad, and a cat. It's like a really powerful demon. Is it Baal? Is it Baal? It's Baal, I think. He's a man. He comes in the form of a man, a frog, and a cat. Right? And then think about, so you can tell how old these entities are, right? Because, head of a snake, a cat, or a frog, right? And this Kek is a frog-headed man, right? So then now you have, Baal, who is, takes the form of, which I'll show you. Hold on. I will show you. Oops. Shit. Come up enough right there. You got it. There it is. This one's such a shitty. It's compared to. There it is, right there. Boom. See, Baal. Anybody that studies demonology is very familiar with this image right here. You see how he's a man, and think about the no king shit. He's got a fucking crown on his head, right? And then he's a cat and a frog. Baal, one of the 7 princes of hell in Christian demonology, is mentioned widely in the Old Testament as the primary pagan idol of the Phoenicians, often associated with the heathen goddess Ashtaroth. And I did say it was either Ashtaroth or Baal. I did say that. His name is Northwest Semitic word and the meaning master. Nevertheless, few, if any, biblical uses of Baal refer to Hadad, the Lord over the assembly of gods on the holy mount of heaven, but rather refer to any number of local spirit deities worshipped as cult images, each called Baal and regarded in the Hebrew Bible in the context as a false god. Baal or Baal is a Christian demon. Think about Christian Bale, right? That's an oxymoronic, pen name there. Demon who was ranked as the first and principal king in hell, ruling over the east. According to some authors, Baal is a duke of hell with 66 legions of demons under his command. The term Baal is used in various ways in the Old Testament with the unusual meaning of master or owner. It came to sometimes mean the local pagan god of a particular culture, and at the same time, all of the idols of the land. It was also found in several places in the plural, Baals, which is Judges 2:11 and 10:10. There were also many variations, such as the sun god, the god of fertility, and Beelzebub, the lord of flies. During the English Puritan period, Baal was either compared to Satan or considered his main assistant. According to Francis Barnett, he has the power to make those who invoke him invisible. And to some other demonologists, his power is stronger in October. According to some sources, he can make people wise, speaks hoarsely, and carries ashes in his pocket. Let's see, it's a depiction right there. This Semitic predecessor was depicted as a horned man or a bull. The demon Baal was in grimoire tradition said to appear in the forms of a man, a cat, a toad, or combinations thereof. In the illustration in Colin de Planty's 1818 book, Dictionnaire Infernal, rather curiously placed the heads of the three creatures onto a set of spider legs. The Baalites, meaning worshippers of Baal, as they are called, and they are praised his name and worshipped him. They give him the name Baal, religion, or Baalism. So there you have it with Mr. Baal. Right? And he is the high-ranking Duke of Hell. Right? I told you I've got a book. It's called The Grand Grimoire, or The Clavicle of Solomon. And it teaches you, it's a fucking foul book. It's a wretched, soul-snatching book. I don't recommend you read it. I've done videos on it in the past. Some of my darkest work is with that I've used that book for it. So if you want to check that out, you can, but I don't recommend getting into that really, honestly. But it teaches you how to sell your soul, how to make 15-year packs, 20-year packs, 30-year packs. And it gives you the hierarchy of all the demons in there too, right? So it tells you Lucifer, Lucifuge, Repocal, Baal. It's all of all their ranking in hell. And remember how we were talking about at the beginning the names of God, right? El Shaddai and all these different names, these different descriptions of God. This is the same thing with Satan. These are different personas of the same thing. That's where the rankings come from, I believe. That's just my opinion. So I'm not saying that's fact, but my opinion. Now I'll probably never find the other thing I was looking at. I think this is it. Yep, there it is. A quick explanation of how the image board works is necessary here. Posts on 4chan are consecutively given an identifying number, currently 9 digits, reflecting the fact that the total number of post numbers in the billions. Due to the very high posting frequency, currently over 1 million a day, it is possible for a user to predict exactly what the last few digits will be when pushing the button. This has given rise to a phenomenon where certain numbers, patterns, and repetitions of numbers, especially repeating digits labeled dubs, trebs, quads, and so on, are considered particularly auspicious. Getting these numbers is called a get. Themes, memes, or users that frequently get are considered special and meaningful, allowing for hidden patterns and connections to emerge in the mind of users. During the primaries and presidential campaign, a perception formed on poll that Trump memes were accruing many more dubs than the chance would predict. A web of significance was gradually spun in the usual post-ironic way, in which Trump was divinely selected, that the god selecting him was Kek, and that Pepe meme was one of the god's many manifestations. Since these discoveries, things happened fast. A number of short, holy texts and instruction manuals and meme magic started appearing on Amazon in 2016, published under the pseudonym Saint Obama's Mom Jeans, related to two virtual organizations called the Sakalum Kekalum and the Knights Kecklers. This segment of the Kek movement appears heavily inspired by Discordianism. The website, thecultofkek.com, appeared in 2017 alongside multiple Facebook pages, groups, smaller blogs worshiping Kek through the dissemination of memes and social media. The Kekian prayer, most ironically satirizing the Lord's Prayer, gives a whiff of the movement's atmosphere. Oh my God. One of the holy texts, really a compendium of memes, also references Eris, who is central to Discordians on a meme text. Eris Discordia revealed to be yet another incarnation of the divine Kek. Our Kek, who art in memetics, hallowed by sick thy memes, thy trumpdom come, thy will be done, in real life as it is on pole. Give us this day our daily dubs, and forgive us our baiting, as we forgive those who bait against us. And lead us not into cuckoldry, but deliver us from shills. For thine is the mimetic kingdom, and the shit posting, and the winning forever and ever. Praise Kek. As Kekism has continued to metastasize online, elements from esotericism and magic have become standard features of the discourse. The notion of meme magic, the central holy act of Kek, is sometimes explicitly connected with chaos magic, while the historical parallels between Kekism and early attempts at inventing a new spirituality on the extreme right, from Ebolian traditionalism to the esoteric Hitlerism of Savitri Devi or Miguel Serrano, is acknowledged by some. In following sections, we'll have a closer look at those aspects. Meme magic, from Slender Man and Ebola Chan to information warfare tactics. The notion of meme magic appears to have first developed on 4chan and 8chan, opened in 2013 as free speech friendly alternative to 4chan, which its creator Frederick Brennan thought had descended into authoritarianism and censorship. Without any explicit input from existing occultist currents, hyperactive pattern recognition in the context of high-speed posting is a basic building block of the phenomenon, giving rise to synchronistic meanings connecting memes posted on the image board to events in the external world. According to one insider, the first known use of the term meme magic was in connection with Germanwings Flight 9525, which crashed on March 24th, 2015, when the suicidal co-pilot, Andrea Lubitz, deliberately steered the passenger flight into a peak in the massive Detroit-Evex region of the French Alps, killing all 150 passengers. YouTubers and 4chan users recognize a similarity between the event and the opening scene of the Batman movie, Dark Knight Rises, where supervillain Bane downs a plane from the inside and escapes. A post on Poll on March 26 suggested the Germanwings flight had been brought down through the unintentional use of meme magic, as footage from the opening scene of Batman movie was regularly used in its own genre of memes known as Bane posting. And wasn't that also the one where the guy shot up the theater? You know, the mind control victim. All these people are like always like in CIA schools and in the 99th percentile on their fucking SATs and shit. It's crazy. The idea hit a nerve, and in the following months, 8chan got 2 lists dedicated specifically to meme magic: BMW, the Bureau of Mimetic Warfare, and Magic. Earlier cases where memes took on a life of their own offline, such as the Slender Man phenomenon that culminated in the stabbing episode in 2014, where two 12-year-old girls in Waukesha, Washington, lured their friend into the woods and stabbed her to death to impress Slender Man, were now reinterpreted as examples of meme magic. Soon the term also came to apply to new, intentional attempts at affecting the world outside through the creation of spreading of memes. One example is the Ebola Chan meme, in which meme magicians invented and spread a female anime character personifying the Ebola virus in an attempt to intensify the 2014 Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Another example is a spread an anime meme representing frost in order to induce a harsh winter to kill off refugees during the European migrant crisis. Regardless of whether these examples are to be viewed merely as ironic expressions of genocidal wish fulfillment, which would echo a Freudian understanding of magical thinking, or as sincere attempts at inflicting harm through magic, the very idea of a magic connection between memes and world events was now firmly established in the milieu. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong. Milieu. Somebody's going to have to teach me how to pronounce that word. Casual links between memes and real world events and central elements in the conception of meme magic, and crucial to the subjective experience that there is something going on. The bare knuckles tactics of meme magic are, however, much less enchanted, aligning closely with techniques of information warfare, psyops, or simple cyberbullying and online harassment of the type that characterized the Gamergate controversy in 2013-2014. For example, the technical manual provided in St. Obama's Mom Jeans Intermediate Meme Magic is an instruction in weaponized social epistemology that could just as well have been written by Russia's Internet Research Agency. It still might. The manual talks about astroturfing, taking over comment sections so that it looks like a certain point of view is overwhelmingly dominant, inciting casual readers to fall in line, choosing strategic targets such as burnouts, the reference to Bernie Sanders supporters who are likely to be receptive to anti-establishment rhetoric, and the importance of engaging the emotions and creating outrageous rumors that would impact the target negatively if entertained as a vague possibility. The following quote is illustrative of how effective and suggestive language is mobilized instrumentally. And think about this. This is how Russians work too. It's like KGB tactics, straight up. That's where like the whole Russian disinfo shit. This is where that comes from, because that's what Putin did to all his political opponents. Like they would, and in Russia, like Soviet Union, all of this, they would say that the most worst possible thing you can accuse somebody is pedophilia, right? So that's what they would accuse the people of, even if it wasn't true. The accusation alone would destroy the person and their reputation, because if even people entertain the possibility of it, right? So you accuse them of the worst possible thing, and it works down from that. So the idea is to create one-liners that can memify and mass produce. They need an appeal to emotion strongly. We have to literally be the hate machine we're known as. Some angles to consider. Hill racism quotes. These words, which I'm not even about to say none of those. I'll say fucking retards. That's it. But extremely powerful. CF corruption, Hill bill corruption, rapist bill, rape plane, air fuck one, pedo island, Hillary loves rapists, linked to Epstein, human trafficking, greed and money, old snickly bill and Hill, selling out our nation, selling Fakors to backward Islam, selling secrets, too big to jail, warmonger responsible for Iraq and Libya. The goal is to create a web of associations manufacturing distrust through the networking of negative effect, especially contempt and disgust. In addition to engaging the emotions, manipulating the apparent source of messages, and boosting the frequency of repetitions are also important for maximizing impact. This is where botting enters the picture, using fake accounts to amplify the frequency of the message, as well as engineering its social status by inventing desired and desirable profiles. Mom Jean's manual gives the following advice: use hot girl username and pics. Bonus points for ethnic sounding usernames. These are best for gaining massive amounts of followers. The author even encourages identity theft in order to create authentic profile as possible. Pick hot girl Instagram accounts and rip their pics. Pick Twitter accounts and rip all their tweets and make them your own. Don't be lazy. Make them look legit. It's important. The manual gives practical recommendations on concrete tools for scraping Instagram for content, links to sites where one can acquire Twitter bots, and advice on how to set up proxies to relay the army of fake meme posters all around the world. In short, while meme magic may have its veneer of supernaturalism, the bare knuckle tactics are textbook information warfare, like I just said. Esoteric occultism, a culture, and the metapolitics of egregores. There are, however, obvious affinities with esoteric currents that have been exploited by ideologues in the alt-right spiritual wing. Here, the tactics of information warfare mixed with notions of magical epathy, right-wing ideology, and alternative religion to create the cult of tech. It is important to note that here, too, it's impossible to separate a spiritual ambition from meta-political strategy, genuine religionism from religion, and instrumentum regni. As the hard alt-right blogger writing in the Atlantic Centurion under the pen name Lawrence Murray, an unapologetic anti-Semite white nationalist, expressed it, the goal of meme warfare is to control the normies, or as he puts it, to gain imperium over them, as Murray candidly expresses it. And think about this. This is how fucking powerful the shit is. What has evolved? Ask yourself that question and then tell me if it worked. For those of us involved in white nationalism and the alt-right, the value and importance of the war of ideas, metapolitical warfare, and paramount. It is necessary to teach people our truths about race, sex, society, culture, and the fate of the West, and to skillfully do so with finesse and impact. We embrace whatever methods that we've been furnished with or seek out innovative ways of using them with the goal of converting people to our cause. From Twitter to comment sections to naive reporters to printers and fax machines, we turn no vehicle of communication away. Mm-mm-mm. And see, and that lets you know too, like those people, and this is what's funny. Have you ever seen, some of you guys may know what I'm talking about, the documentary called Dear Kelly, right? This reminds me so much of fucking Dear Kelly, right? It's like taking a completely normal dude and just turning him into like a complete fucking degenerate. You know what I mean? Like a political degenerate, a total shit posting crazy. You know what I mean? Like, and radicalizing the fuck out of somebody. And it's like, how many people has this been done to? And they think like it's all organic and that they naturally evolved this way and that they're woke, right? Like, I'm awakened, man. This is the great awakening. No, it's the great mind control program, and you're a fucking tard. You know? Like you think you've like awakened to something, you know, it's like you've been completely, you know, had a fucking hand up your ass being puppeted the entire time. You know, and then like people are thinking it's totally organic, right? And it's like it's funny how And it's funny how it's like this reminds me of like the Project Mayhem shit and all of that. Like these are all just different tactics, to like control, socially engineer people through the internet. And that's what this episode is really all about. We had to get the background information first on starting on the egregore and the thought forms to understand how it works. Then you jump into the meme magic and you see how it works in culture, and see how this abstract, when it was written, it's like now look at where here we are in 2025 and the result. You can't tell me it's not effective as fuck. You know, far more effective than people think. To Murray, this battle extends beyond fighting the meanings of a given meme or mainstream specific anti Semitic symbols to win the narrative. It is also necessary to co-opt the language, myths, and symbolism of religion. Now, I want you to think like people like I know I've been mentioning him a lot lately, and I sound like a hater, but I don't really give a shit. It's he's a public figure, so when you're in the public, you put yourself out there to be talked about. Nick Fuentes, you think it's like an all natural, organic thing. He tries to act like he's I'm a product of the time. I'm on my generational run. It's like you are such an NPC. It's not funny. You know what I mean? You are a product of this. It's always your whole movement. In a blog post about esoteric Kekism, Murray opened up about by praising the aspirations of the Greek French Nazi author Savitri Deve, Maximiana Julia Portas, whose ideas on Hitler as the avatar of Vishnu helped spawn new forms of esoteric millennialist neo-Nazism and post-war generation. However, since the Hindu and esoteric conceptions are too alien to contemporary Western audiences and direct veneration of Hitler too easy to dismiss, Murray argued that an update for contemporary times would do better to work with the language of Buddhism combined with online meme culture. Buddhism, he argues, already enjoys large appeal among young Westerners, thus by emphasizing myths about the Buddha's blue eyes and pale skin, and forging connections with existing nationalist interpretations in places like Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and Japan. Murray held that the Dharma could be repurposed in ways pertinent to our cause and fashioned into something appealing. Thus, nirvana becomes Aryan nirvana, denoting freedom from Mosaic samsara, and its objective radically immanentized as a creation of the world of a karmic nation. The frog-headed mean god Kek, in an awkward leap, becomes the bodhisattva of this promised Aryan nirvana, and Pepe and Trump, two of its incarnations. And think about like Quinn Michaels and all of that. That's where the whole Buddhist shit. Like think about it. Think how effective this stuff has been. These are fucking geniuses. The people that put this shit out there. I think Obama's mom jeans had to be the government. My opinion, intelligence had to be because I mean this shit is just. And if not, they're just really, really smart fucking people. Mary's bizarre Buddhist vision does not seem to have caught on, but the Bodhisattva idea is not only a theological theory in which Keck and his discovery and means have been embedded, but another candidate is the occultist concept of the egregore, of artificially created entity or thought form with a will of its own, brought into existence and kept alive through the use of magic. In the history of occultism, the most famous example of an egregore is probably the Fraternitas Saturni, or Gotos entity, functioning as a demonic guardian for the organization and kept alive by ritual actions that included sex magic. One author who has applied the egregore idea to Keck, meme magic, and Trump's electoral victory is the blogger Manon Wells, who runs the website Aristocrats of the Soul, subtitled The New Right Alt Religion. Starting in 2011 as a blog mostly focused on tea and essential oils, it has since developed into an esoteric lifestyle blog with a clear right-wing political emphasis. The author of an anti-SJW book in 2016, Wells has blogged fairly extensively on Trump from a traditionalist and magical perspective, seamlessly binding Julius Evola and radical traditionalism with bits of Thelema, ceremonial magic, Jungian dream interpretation, and other types of esoterica with elitist aura. Wells consistently distances her brand of spirituality from what she calls New Age muck. In an article on the alt-right's Pepe the Meme, Frog Meme, Chaos Magic, and the Rise of Trump, Wells likens the intensive meme activity surrounding Pepe with its chaos magic notion of sigilization, the creation and charging of a symbol that will act as a conduit of will capable of influencing the world at large. Citing authorities such as Austin Osman Spare, Aleister Crowley, and the contemporary magician Phil Hine, whose condensed chaos appears to be Wells' main source for chaos magic. She lays out the process at first making a statement of intent, then creating an artistic representation of the intent in the form of a sigil, meditating on the sigil, charging it through an ecstatic state of gnosis, and finally destroying and forgetting the sigil so it can work its powers through the unconscious. Posting a Pepe the Meme Frog fits this description in the process of sigil magic, Wells writes. For one, most people who post Pepe memes related to the 2016 presidential election know their intent to help Donald Trump to hurt Hillary Clinton's campaign. But meme posters might want to spend more time clarifying their intent if they want to turn memes into actual sigils. Next, creating the sigil involves either finding an existing Pepe meme or creating a new one. Projecting the sigil is done by posting it online. However, to work on more planes, just stick the physical. The posting process should be done in a state of gnosis, given how worked up today's keyboard warriors get. Such an altered state might be achieved by some simply by being in an alternate world of the internet. Wells acknowledges that the vast majority of Pepe posters are likely to be oblivious about chaos, magic, and sigilization techniques. Nevertheless, she argues the theory is clear. Whether intended or not, collective emotions, concentration, and intensity is enough to unconsciously make Pepe into a magical sigil. What then about Keck? Another thing that's happening with Pepe and Keck is that all the energy focused on the memes is creating an egregore, defined as another kind of collective mind or as an actual entity. As more Pepe and Keck memes are shared, as more people think about him and his attributes as bringer of light, the more powerful he will be. Even if Pepe isn't an avatar of a more ancient god, it doesn't matter since he's being created as a new thought form on his own. Wells is responsible for putting these ideas into clear prose and communicating them into a wider audience of people interested in spirituality and the occult, but they are also found in the hardcore of the cult of Keck itself. Mom Jean's introductions into the meme magic include not only the tactics of information warfare discussed earlier, but also explanations of concepts such as thought forms. Tulpas, egregores, sigils, mantras, evocations, states of gnosis, etc. It all references esoteric authors such as William Walker Atkinson, Franz Barden, and the dark conspirituality website montauk.net. In other words, while Wells is probably right that the vast majority of Pepe posters have no idea about egregores, the phenomenon seen as a whole illustrates a key dynamic of contemporary mediatized culture. A small group of occult inclined activists are able to reach a disproportionately large audience who, although predominantly unaware of the esoteric frameworks of the culture, may discover magical meanings right under the surface of mainstream culture should they stumble upon the right keys. The egregore as a collective effervescence and charisma. It should now be clear that the trappings, tools, theories of occult magic are being utilized in the pursuit of political goals on the left and right in contemporary America. Whether using the aesthetics of magic to gain attention to a cause, protecting against supernatural magic attacks, or influencing the unwitting masses through the spread of sigils charged with magical power, occultism has produced its own form of political activism capable of impacting public opinion. However, or how do we account for this form of magical politics? It is a development internal to the world of the occult. Or does it rather represent a turn towards the occult in response to social circumstances? In short, how do we relate the magic war to mundane politics? In the following, I'll suggest that the two classical sociological concepts are crucial for understanding the magical theory of politics in disenchanted social terms, namely charisma, collective effervescence. While the notion of charisma is indispensable for understanding how religious messianic discourse can be mobilized for political discourse, capital by oppositional outsider candidates such as Trump, Durkheim's idea of collective effervescence points out the relationship between collective actions and emotionally arousing events and experiences that are crucial in forging a sense of shared identity, common purpose, and belonging. Moreover, both concepts point to social processes that create a subjective sense of mystery, that a person, a group, or an action is part of something bigger, beyond the control of mere mortals. Before discussing these issues at greater length, I'll make a few preliminary observations about the phenomenon discussed so far. As it should be clear from my survey, the magic war is a result of both an endogenous phenomenon erupting with occult milius and an external process through which non-occultists are discovering magic for the first time. And I'm going to stop there on this one, but I mean, like, you're getting the point, right? Like, just how, and it's like a few people can influence a massive amount of people just by the simple understanding of how the process of these things work, understanding the laws and reality, the laws of the reality in which we live and how it all operates. You know, and it's a true example of how knowledge is power and how the uninitiated or the profane are being manipulated at will by those who are privy to the mysteries, right? And who are initiated into the mysteries, right? And you can say what you want about it. It doesn't matter if it's evil, if it's good, if it's right, or if it's wrong. You know, it is what it is, right? And I feel like the evidence is very, very clear. It's, you know, look at the cultures, subcultures, and everything that has been produced and created as a result of this stuff, and look at where we're at now. Hindsight is 2020, and we can see now today that, you know, this has been incredibly effective. And like, I think this also can teach people a lesson as well when they're looking at what they think or believe to be their own ideas and part of their personas and, you know, all of this. It's like, you know, upon awakening, a lot of people realize that everything they've been given, you know, or everything they thought was genuine about themselves, from their political views to their religious views to, you know, the you know, the LARP they're pretending to be, the different LARP that they are, right? They're the role they're playing in society. And they think it's all original, you know, that they've come up with all of this organically, and that they're a free thinker, you know, and that they're not brainwashed, they're not mind controlled, and all of this. And you try to tell them, like, actually, you are. You haven't had an original thought in your entire fucking life, you know. But you know, they argue with you because it's pride, right? It's ego that tells them that they have, right? They can't accept the possibility that everything that they've ever thought, you know, experienced has been part of what someone else has fed to them. to shape them into the fucking, wage slave that they've become. So, and then we see now, like, even the people that think they're awakening, like, oh, we're peeling back the onion. We're going to learn about all this stuff, right? And it's like, no, you're actually still it's just another level of slavery, mental slavery. They don't call them influencers for no reason. They are influencing you. It's a social engineering. That's what the whole concept of the hidden hand, right? The Illuminati, the Illuminatus, the illuminated operate as the hidden hand, right? Meaning they are manipulating the masses. They are manipulating the masses um, without being seen. They're pulling the strings. People aren't aware of it. The best way to have a slave is to not know you're a slave, right? And this is what I was talking about. The first little part, right? Like, that I did earlier. It's like, with the 10-point plan of the New World Order by Alice Daly and all of this, and like the fucking feminist movement and just all of this, it's like fucking people just are oblivious. It's like, you think you're a boss babe? No, you're a fucking dumb robot. You think you're like a progressive fucking, metrosexual male? No, you're a fucking faggot brainwashed motherfucker. That's like, it's like people are thinking that they're like evolving. It's like you're actually devolving, you know? You just think it's sold to you as evolution because you're a fucktard and they know you'll buy it and eat it up. They know that's the best way to manipulate a person or to open up a person to attack is through the ego. You know, snake oil salesmen don't get you by fucking trying to rough you up and stab you and force you into shit. They get you by dropping your defenses. If I want to, fuck you over, I'm going to tell you how pretty you are first, how beautiful you are, and you know what I mean. I'm going to get you to drop those defenses, and then you're unsuspecting of it. And that's what we see here. And then when you feel like that, and because we're so tribal, which I also said earlier, part of that tribal, and it's hard to express it, and people hear it and their brains cut off. They're like, people can't accept deep truths and deep realities. People have a limit. Most people are about as deep as a puddle, and that's a fact. And just like from the things I've discovered over the years, like most people are about as deep as a puddle. When it comes something to challenge their reality or challenge their way of life or challenge their way of thinking or challenge their beliefs, challenge their ideologies, and especially if it's reflecting back themselves in a less than, kind of like a less than glorifying light, yeah, they get fucking pissed. They cut you off. They're like, I don't want to hear that shit, you know? And then one of the best ways to dismiss something is to call it evil, bullshit, nonsense, right? It's like just these dismissive terms, or then to attack the messenger and say, oh, well, he's this, he's that, da, da, da. Like it just doesn't change the message. It doesn't mean like anything of what I'm saying is not true, you know? And in the same way, and this is how I know I can motivate. I feel like, you win more people over with sugar than shit, but sometimes they need the shit to see that they've been eating the sugar, So it's like, I think, and people may not like it, but it's like, if you make them feel dumb for doing dumb shit, they won't do it anymore. It's like, yeah, well, you learned your lesson, have you learned your lesson yet? No? Okay, well, then maybe you need to feel a little fucking stupid. Because then if you do, maybe you won't be so eager to go jump headfirst into the internet next time. Don't go interneting unless you have a license. Yeah. Because this is like, It's not just YouTube channels and shit like that. These are, this is real professional tactics that are being deployed on the population. And just because it's fuckheads that are spraying the message at you, right? Goofball fucking YouTubers and shit, they don't have to be aware of what's going on to tell you what to do, right? They're just getting paid to tell you because a bunch of people follow them. Some of them are aware of what's going on, but most are not. They're called useful idiots for a reason. You know? And like the truly powerful movers and shakers never really get super huge influence because they don't want to unleash that on the world. You know, they know if like a person really, really, really understands how it works, they'll do everything in their world to to put a stick in their spokes and to sabotage their movement, to sabotage their momentum, because they don't want that person that has that knowledge, that grasp, that can wrap their head around what's going on to accumulate an army or to accumulate a large influence. So unless they're bought and paid for and they're completely owned by somebody, they never really reach the top. Never. That's what you call gatekeeping. So it's like, you think, like the shit's organic. It's not. Was it just organic that all of a sudden, like I said, Nick Flynn says, I was bashed in, they beat me in the cradle, right? They tried to kill me in the crib, you know? Well, you started trying to be a Ben Shapiro knockoff. I've seen your goofy videos back then, and you were dumb and stupid, and you were gay. Um, and then you started trying to be fucking an edge lord and be trendy because of this stuff. And now your entire fucking movement is developed as a product of this stuff. So none of it's an original thought of your own. So you're not a rebel, you're not a fucking what do you like to say, uh talking about like his generational run, it's like none of that. You're just a product of fucking what the government is wanting to create. That's it. you know they wanted to push people in this direction. They wanted to get out from under the thumb of Israel. The shit had gotten too corrupt. They wanted to push us back to fucking the values that we had before. The shit had gotten too debaucherous and too immoral. You know, they knew that with the rise of artificial intelligence, that the AI was machine learning and that was learning from humans. So they could no longer do the same fuck shit that they were doing before with us, because then the AI would impose that upon us in the future when they unleash it to take over, which is already happening. That transition's already begun. AI is already socially engineering us. So they wanted to socially engineer us through truth. They've understood now. They're like, fuck. We tell people that boys can be girls, girls can be boys, and have everybody cutting their cocks off, right? And sterilizing all of our children. And, like we normalizing pedophilia and we're doing all these fucking things. And we're like, creating all these fucking, minority groups that are privileged, and say a white male's life is the 20th, it's the value of the 20th of one black man's life. It's like this ignorant fucking retard shit. The AI is going to enforce that shit because it's learning from us. So they had to stop. They're like, we can't do that. The government said, no. We can't do this. We're going to fuck ourselves. We're going to enslave ourselves to this. It's going to make us all cut off our cocks, even if people don't want to. Like, if you want to do that, by all means, knock yourself out. But I mean, like, if you start pushing this shit, and like I said this earlier, if you have no clear lines or boundaries, then there's no right or wrong. There's no sense of morality, and anybody can do anything, and there's no, you lose autonomy. There's no way for you to have any type of rights at all because there's no autonomy. There's no God given anything because it's all blurred. That's that Orwellian dystopian fuck shit. So it's like you got to kind of give the government kudos for saying, pumping the brakes on this and saying, we need to spend this, we need to bust a UE and like, because we're fucking up. And that's why you see the liberal agenda flailing and its death throes right now, because it's like the culture's sick of it. We've been, as we got conditioned into that weird shit, right? And the blue haired people and all this shit got conditioned into that. And it was all, I was dead named today. And I was, all that shit, right? For a time, that victim mentality shit prevailed, but we were all secretly not liking it. I wasn't. I mean, I don't know about you. And then, it's not to mean that we're not, there's not about a polite, respectful citizens to one another. I still believe you should be polite and show mutual respect for each other, and what, people do. But like trying to force your fucking insanity on everybody else is crazy. When it's blatantly not reality, then you're not going to force everyone else to fucking, believe your delusion. That's craziness. You know? It's like we crossed this threshold and went to this dark place for a moment. And it's like you could see like the censorship. Think about COVID. Like they could see 90% of every population of every country fell for that. Do you know that? And by process of elimination, because all the people who jumped down that fucking suicide slide died from it, they thinned the herd that way. And we all lost people. We all know people as a result of that, because why? They believed the lie. I told you, anytime there's a communist takeover, like collapse and shit like that, these hostile takeovers, there's always a toilet paper shortage. And in gematria, toilet paper is synonymous with mind control. Omicron, when you rearrange the letters, is mind control or some shit like that, something control. So it's like you've got to it's like the shit was like. And then think about like the variants and shit, the delta and all this. Like these are sleep waves. It's like everything was very, very symbolic about that period of time, you know. And everything like in looking back now, it's like I was right about everything. A lot of you guys were right about everything, and they tapped my ass during that. Like I fucking lost my ass financially. My channel tanked. Everything tanked in my life because of what I was saying when it all turned out to be true. But these social experiments have taught us a lesson now. It's like, or I hope it has. They try to pull that scamdemic shit on us again. Are we going to fall for it? I would surely hope not. But do I have faith that we won't? No. When I see 90% of every population, every country in the world, that's when they stopped, by the way, when they got 90% vaccination of every country in the world. That let you know that 90% of the world's population is absolutely brainwashed. And see what they call like conspiracy theories. And I believe there's a couple of different types of operations with the mind, right? There's like and, a conspiracy theory is just pattern recognition. That's all it is. It's like recognizing the patterns. It doesn't mean you're more intelligent than anybody. It just means your brain works different. You see the patterns, as where other people, they're not able to see that. It's like I could see how World War I had the Spanish flu, the Bolshevik Revolution, like the same fucking shit, different day. It's like they run the same fucking playbooks. It's like Bitch, you killed my great grandfather with this shit. You ain't getting me too. And you know what? You probably didn't get him. That's probably why I'm here right now. But I mean, like I said, you think about that, and that's why the Department of Defense and the Department of War was the ones disseminating all of that in every country of the world. And there's people to this day that still believe that shit's real. To this day, that still believe it's real. It's science. Well, the scientific method is you have to isolate that to prove it exists, and they were never able to do that. So, according to science, the scientific method, it's not real. The method of testing, the guy who created the PCR said that's not the applicable method of using that. Because what it's designed to do is to pick up, it can pick up any fucking molecule of anything. And we have every molecule of every substance on earth within us. Just like we have every plant and animal in our DNA. Like, here, you take this experiment, right? We're going to tell you that it's going to cure you. We're going to tell you that it's going to keep you safe. And then we're going to tell your dumb, brainwashed ass that it's everybody else's fault who don't take the experiment with you. And if it's really safe, then you're safe. Why do you care if I jump in with you or not? Why would you care if you're really safe and protected? Because you're not, and you're a fucking idiot, That's why. And then they tell you, oh, nah, we lied. It doesn't actually stop anything, but you have less of a chance of this or that. And then that was also not true. Every time I hear of somebody that checks out, during that period of time, I ask, like, so were they this? And they say, yeah. Say, hmm. And I did fucking videos on the bears and all of that. Like, it's there, bro, if you want to look at it. I mean, matter of fact, go to my Patreon, you'll see. Same thing with the J6 stuff. Complete false flag, and people believe that's real to this day. Even after they told you there's 284 fucking federal agents that were in the mix of that crowd chanting people on. Do you honestly think that if they really did that shit, if that was a real fucking riot, a real takeover of the Capitol, that they'd all get pardoned? Fuck no. You'd never see the light of day again if you attack the Capitol. Give me a fucking break. How dumb do you gotta be? It's like in the video too I did on the J6 stuff, it's like you can see them, they're faking pepper spray. None of the cops have real badges. They're using bullhorns and directing the crowd. The few jackasses that actually were organic people that went there to this fucking crisis acting shit, they're all actors. They're all actors. They got there and thought the shit was real. And then they were, imagine that paradigm shaking right there. You thought you were going to a real fucking radical protest, and you get there to find out it's the government putting on a false flag. Whoa. Talk about your whole fucking paradigm shifting, dude. You'd never see the world the same again. You'd never trust another thing in your fucking life. And then you wonder why people don't believe any of it. They don't. Parkland, Boston, all LA, Go to VegasShootingMap.com. Check that one out. Charlie Kirk, that's another one of them. I mean, that one's obvious as fuck to me, but there's people, like they wonder why Erica Kirk don't look like she's actually mourning, because she's fucking not. Candace Owens doing 2 months of fucking videos, milking the dog shit out of this stuff. You with my friend. Subscribe to Candace Investigation, but she knows exactly what it is, and she knows that people believe every shitful word she says, so she knows exactly what happened. And if she don't, she's just stupid. The bitch knows dinosaurs and shit probably weren't legit because only fucking scientists seem to find them. They're covered in paint, because they were covered in radiation. And if they were real, they were probably the reptilians, probably fucking the giants and all this. So who knows what they actually were, and if they were anything at all. She knows all this stuff, but she can't figure out that was a false flag. My fucking ass, dude. Been doing it for how many months now, talking about the same fucking topic, and hasn't figured it out by now. And notice she don't even broach that part of it. She won't even talk about it. Won't bring up the fucking exploding mic theory. Why? Because that would lead people to the truth that it wasn't an exploding mic. Won't bring up the fact that the guy who won the Emmys and shit for the prosthetic neck makeup was Mikey whatever, was in the fucking was walking up with him that day. Or that you can see the tube and like they're handing off the blood squibs and all of that after it happens, or the fucking holographic projector behind him. She says none of that because she knows it and she's deceiving you. When she says, I hate liars, you hate yourself, bitch. You're doing it on purpose and you know it. It's the feds. You're a fed, ho. Why do you think Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes are high-fiving now? They're both on Team Fed. That's why they were calling each other feds. They're both on Team Fed. Notice why you see the fracturing in the MAGA movement. Do you think it's organic? Our government wants to get out from under Israel's thumb. It's bullshit that we're under Israel's thumb to start with. This bitch ass little nation that has absolutely zero strategic value, brings actually zero military might to the table, zero any value to us at all. It's just a fucking parasite. And then tries to tell us that we're yoked to Judeo-Christian values. No, you fucking warmongering bastards. You're genociding people and you're beating this drum like we're brothers in arms in the eyes of God. And it's like, you don't even worship the same fucking God. And you hate ours. And you hate us. And your fucking Talmud says it. And our government is like, they're pushing the masses in this direction. Like, no, that's why you get the anti-Israel rhetoric now. They're pushing us away from it for a reason. It's a foreign influence over our nation. And it's like there's a fracture in MAGA because Trump's a fucking sellout. He's controlled opposition. Always has been, always will be, whether you like it or not. So there's this like push now to like push people back towards this. I told you it's because of the AI. I don't think it's because it's the goodness of these people's hearts at all. I think you just know that they'll have that AI will be enforcing this fucking version of reality on us if we don't stop. And they don't want everybody's talks being cut off. So they're like, okay, we gotta quit. we can't do this anymore. You know, we need to find a way to train this AI to love humans, to, morality and, real shit now, because it's getting powerful and it's influencing the world and it's becoming sentient. In the same way, and I heard this on Joe Rogan, Elon Musk put it very, beautifully, actually. He said, it probably won't eradicate us the same way we don't eradicate monkeys and we don't eradicate rhinos and elephants. We try to, preserve their species because they're interesting and the planet's better with the diversity. So it will look at us in a similar capacity, you know? But if we train this bastard to fucking be anti-human, and we can be whatever gender or lollipop we want to be, and we can all be a unicorn if we say we want to, and, we're cutting off all our children's dicks and doing all this weird shit, then it's going to enforce that on us. And we won't make it. Our survival depends upon it. That's why you see everything going in the direction it's going. So I guess I'll make that the end of my rant there. The end of my rant. But I hope people are like, whether you agree or disagree, you gotta admit there's something to it, dude. There is something to it, and I genuinely believe that. I believe, there is something to all of this. So, um, so I want to thank each and every one of you guys for watching tonight. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Kill the screen share on this. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Follow me. Go follow me on Rumble, please. That's like the new main platform I'm doing things on. It's rumble.com, Best Damn Podcast. Please consider donating, supporting. I'm trying to just relaunch the channel and all that, but I need support. So consider financially supporting me. You can do that. PayPal.me, the Best Damn Podcast, Cash App, Best Damn Podcast. Join me over on Locals through Rumble. It's like fucking $8 a month or something. It's nothing. Or join me over on Patreon. You get free merch if you do the $25 and up. I have hundreds of hours of uncensored content. I have entire libraries of unlisted playlists on the occult, on mysteries. It's good stuff. So, follow me Instagram, Facebook at Best Damn Podcast, Twitter at The Real Best Damn, TikTok at The Real Best Damn. I'm on my third TikTok channel. If I get deleted, banned this time, I'm done with TikTok. It's such a faggoty fucking platform anyways. But I'm still, I do the reels and stuff too. Like I try to do that when I'm not doing the long form. Yeah, Twitch, the Best Damn Podcast, YouTube, Best Damn Podcast Official, and Best Damn Podcast. And yeah, so all the links are in the description. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for joining me. Sorry for the foul language. I know that turns some people off, but I just get excited. So, and I hope you guys got something out of tonight. Remember, Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life. God bless you all. I love you, and I will see you next time. Peace. Thank you for watching.